You're watching BCTV. We're all about Branford. You're watching BCTV, Branford Government Television, a service of Branford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Branford.
Okay, I have 7:02 and it looks like we're all here. So I think we can call this meeting of the Branford Planning and Zoning Commission order. It is Thursday, November 5th, 2020. This is our regular meeting. We have a number of public hearings and items on the agenda, and we typically have Marcy read the notice of public hearing, but the first item we have is an executive session. I think probably what we'll do is we'll go ahead and do the executive session, then we'll go through the introductions.
Not on mute.
So forth.
That's in the meeting.
So with that, our first item is the executive session to discuss strategy and pending matter of appeal of the Housing Authority of the Town of Branford, Town of Branford Planning and Zoning Commission, what we'll need is a motion to go into executive session. And I suggest inviting the members of the commission who are present, which would be John, Joe Vaiuzzo, Fred Russo, Marcy Pelusi, Paul Higgins. Joe Chadwick, I believe, has recused himself, so we would not, is that correct, Joe?
Correct, I am recused.
So Joe would not be going into the executive session. Also invite our town planner, Harry Smith, and also our attorneys, Bill Iniskovich and Danielle Berkery, as well as First Selectman James Cosgrove. So is there a motion to go in executive session with those members to discuss the pending zoning appeal?
Fred Rush, I'll make a motion that we go into executive session.
Okay, Fred, and yes, and I guess your motion made by Fred. Is there a second?
So second.
Okay, Marcy seconds. I'll go all in favor. John, you in favor?
John Lust in favor.
And Joe Chadwick recused himself, so I won't ask you, Joe. Joe Vaiuzzo?
In favor.
Fred Russo?
Favor.
Marcy Pelusi?
Marcy Pelusi in favor.
I'm also in favor, and Paul will also be joining us. So we will be going into executive session, and I believe there's a methodology for us to do that. Caitlin, I believe, is going to stay here while the rest of us go into executive session. But we should get an invitation. Caitlin, maybe you can explain.
Sure. So Caitlin here. There's going to be a breakout session which creates another room within the Zoom meeting. Only commission members will be invited to join. Something should pop up on your screen if you're joining by computer, and if you're on the phone, you're automatically going to be put into that when they put out their request. And I'm not exactly sure how long it's going to take, but the meeting will resume after that in space. So anybody here for a public hearing could see here.
I have just one question.
Right.
Chuck.
Sure. Bill Iniskovich for the record, yes.
Thank you, Chuck. Yeah, it's Bill Iniskovich. I just, Caitlin, something that when we were discussing the methodology this morning, I didn't think about. I thought about later. The executive session will not be recorded, correct?
Correct.
That's correct, and we double checked that this afternoon. So
okay.
That is excluded, and we checked with the Zoom website to make sure it was not recorded along with.
Great.
Harry, you can make me the co-host, so I can record this to the cloud. And
Okay, hang on one second. I gotta go back to,
Can you let us know when it goes through? Because I have a join a meeting Zoom box, but it wants a sign in. So I don't know if that's the executive session or not.
I haven't clicked it yet. I'm still making
Okay.
sure I've got everyone here, so it should come in a couple minutes.
This must be the previous one.
Could be.
Okay, I think we can note that at 7:41, our executive session was completed, and we are back in our regular meeting session. Just want to make sure everyone's back. I don't know who the host. Caitlin, are you the host or is Harry?
There's a few stragglers on my screen who should be booted out in about 5 seconds.
Okay.
Right, everyone should be back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, and just noted for the record that we are back in regular session. I got 7:42. We completed the executive session. No votes were taken. That said, does someone want to make a motion to authorize our attorneys to file a petition for certification with the appellate court with respect to the Housing Authority appeal?
I'll make that motion, Chuck. John Luss speaking.
Okay, John's made the motion. Is there a second?
For a second.
Marcy seconds. Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? John, are you in favor?
John Luss in favor.
Joe Vayuso, are you in favor?
Yeah, I'm in favor.
Okay. Fred Russo, are you in favor?
I'm in favor.
Marcy, are you in favor?
Marcy's in favor.
And I'm also in favor. I'm assuming Fred's sitting for Joe Chadwick on this motion. Okay. Okay, with that, we'll proceed then with our regular agenda. I will introduce, again, it's our regular meeting for Thursday, November 5th. I'll introduce members of the commission and staff. Our commission members this evening are John Lust. John, are you here?
John Luss present.
Joe Chadwick.
Chadwick is present.
Joe Vayuso. Joe, you're here, right? He is. Fred Russo. Fred's here. Fred, are you here? Oh, I don't. Okay. He is here. Marcy Pelusi. Marcy.
Marcy's here.
Paul Higgins. You're here.
I'm here.
Okay. Is Massimo here? Caitlin.
No, he didn't join the meeting.
Okay. And our staff this evening is our town planner, Harry Smith. Our assistant planner, Caitlin Piazza.
Here.
And our clerk recording secretary, Michelle Martin. I don't know if she's here.
No.
And I'm Chuck Anderson, our chair. I'll ask our secretary, Marcy, to read the notice of public hearing.
The Planning and Zoning Commission of the Town of Branford, Connecticut hereby gives notice of public hearings to be held on Thursday, November 5th at 7 p.m. by remote technology as authorized by Executive Orders 7B and 7I to consider the applications listed below. Information regarding how to participate in the public hearings will be provided on the meeting agenda that will be posted on the town's website at least 24 hours prior to the meeting. 1. Application number 20-10.2, special exception for a home occupation located at 31 Vista Road. Deborah Gottschalk, if I said that correctly, applicant and owner. At said hearings, all persons will have the right to be heard. A copy of the application materials will be made available at least 24 hours ahead of the meeting at https://www.dropbox.com/home/planning %20% 26 percentage 20 zoning. Under the folder for this particular meeting date, written communication should be submitted by email to p-z@branford-ct.gov by noon of the day before the meeting for posting at the above Dropbox account associated with the town's website.
Chuck Andrews, Chair. Thank you, Marcy. We'll follow a normal format for public hearings. The applicant will go first, make its presentation. We'll have screen sharing available. After the applicant makes its presentation, we turn it over to the commission and staff. We typically have a summary of the staff report and questions and comments from commission members. At that point, we open up to the public. I'm going to ask Caitlin to review the procedure for speaking at a public when we get to the public portion. After the public portion, we allow the applicant to respond to any public comment. We may or may not close the public hearing. A number of these have been going on for a while, which is not unusual for big projects. With that, I will ask Caitlin to review the procedures for participating in public hearing.
Caitlin Piazza here. So if you're joining by computer and you'd like to participate in the public hearing, you have two options. One is to raise your hand. You can do so by hovering over the bottom of the screen, going to participants, finding yourself and clicking the raise hand feature. You can also enter into the chat if you're having a problem with that. Any questions, we just ask that you address everyone. If you're joining by phone and you'd like to raise your hand, you just press *9 and the host will unmute you in the order we see your hands go up. We just ask that you state your name for the record, time you speak, and I believe that's it.
Chuck Andrews here. Thank you, Caitlin. So our first public hearing matter is a series of public hearings. It's the Mariners Landing project at 60 Maple Street. It's a 3-lot re-subdivision. It's also the PDD modification master plan amendment for mixed-use development, and also the site plan and coastal site plan. I see Ms. Shansky is here. Ms. Shansky, and I assume Caitlin will unmute you. And are you ready to proceed? Marjorie, I see your. Nope.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Do you hear me audibly?
Yes.
Thank you. Hi, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I'm attorney Marjorie Shansky. I represent Mariners Landing LLC. With me this evening are Sal Maritoli and Robert Sachs, developers. Site engineer Mike Ott from Summerhill Civil Engineering, landscape architect Ryan Chmielewski from Weston and Sampson, architect Ken Borison from Kenneth Borison Architects, and our traffic engineer David Sullivan from Milone and McBroom. Since last we met, the commission has received revised plans that are responsive to earlier staff reporting and comments from John Goucher at DEEP, as well as additional communications about sea level rise, affordable housing, responses to engineering issues, and of course, later responses to John Goucher's subsequent email. We met with John Goucher, Mr. Ott and Mr. Chmielewski, and I met with John Goucher and were able to resolve his concerns, particularly about the juxtaposition of the public access walkway and the adjacent buildings, and we will speak to that and demonstrate that to the commission as we go forward here. There are, and most of my comments this evening are directly related to Mr. Smith's most recent reporting for this evening's meeting to clarify and respond to what he has identified. The first comment I will make is that these three applications are integrally linked. They really are interdependent, and their records, they should share one record, or they should be able to freely cross-reference the records because they have that depth of linkage. I want to say a word about the 50-foot recommendation between the public access and the buildings that in the recommendation in the POD plan. comments made by Mr. Smith on page 4 of his report to you. There are grade changes. There is landscaping. And Mr. Chmielewski will tell you this evening that we moved the public access easement or public access way most waterward to create the distance. Are you hearing interference for me?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm so sorry. I don't know what to do about that. Is it better now?
Yeah.
Well, it's better when I don't talk. Many people say that. So we took there's an 8-foot pathway and then 7 feet of gravel that are 3 feet and 3 feet, 3.5 feet, 3.5 feet, or 8 foot and 3, whatever. So we moved, Mr. Chmielewski will demonstrate this. We moved the paved portion of the walkway furthest to the water side and put the gravel to build in additional distance between the buildings and the walkway. Then Mr. Chmielewski added a substantial amount of landscaping and the elevation of the units, which are not at ground level. The first unit is up high, satisfied Mr. Goucher that we had overcome his concern about the conflicts that may emerge between public access easements and people living nearby. So he was satisfied with that alteration, and we're happy to show it to you tonight. A question that Mr. Smith has asked previously and wanted more from us on had to do with informing prospective tenants about the public access easement and the public access components to ameliorate future conflicts by having everybody know what they were moving into. And we will include a pocket size or paper letter size copy of the public access map with rental papers so that there is a day one notification. Of course, it will also be observable from all of the signage that we've added, but there will be a day one specific notification to prospective tenants of that element of the development into which they may move. On page 7 of his reporting, Mr. Smith talks about the evacuation plan. And with respect to this and with respect to the public access easement itself, which comes up later in his reporting, there was an evacuation plan associated with the Anchor Reef development. There is in existence an evacuation plan. We provided what I called an addendum to the evacuation plan, and it is precisely that. They are read together. The addendum covers the Mariners Landing portion of the development, although they are, again, interrelated. I noticed in your package that Mr. Smith only gave you the addendum, and I wanted to mention the existence and our having submitted together with the evacuation plan because it will make more sense to you if you read them together, because some of it is simply internally referenced and not restated. So I wanted to clarify that, and if you wanted to see that, please ask Mr. Smith for the entire evacuation plan. On page 8 of his report, Mr. Smith talks about our revised use menu, our menu of uses for the Mariners Landing PDD, and of course it would be PDD applicable. I spent in a conference with Mr. Smith time sorting through what I would call vestigial uses that were approved 20 years ago when the PDD was first adopted, that are no longer desirable, are no longer likely, and in a bit of house cleaning, we removed them and have, I think, what Mr. Smith calls a reasonable approach to the use list. I know that he places, as do we, high value on the restaurant cafe use that's provided as sort of part of the integration of public-private on the east side of the parcel. And if you wanted to make some sort of more definite restriction on that in your conditions of approval, that's fine. That we are as committed as you might be about that. With respect to the public access easement, that is also something that is also recorded on the Branford land records. I refer to its volume page in my letter to you dated September 14th. So it isn't that we don't want to provide you with copies of easements, but we will be amending that easement to reflect the public access components and their meets and bounds and their elements in a revised public access easement to supersede the one that is already of record. In my initial letter to the commission, I described plan POCD consistency as well as coastal consistency that enable the commission to make the required findings of coastal consistency. And as I said, notwithstanding Mr. Goucher's additional email in which he made some engineering or some stormwater management observations, Mr. Ott has responded to those, and that can all be disposed of through revision and or simply identification of elements that are actually already on the plan or integrated in the architectural drawings. So with that, I will have concluding remarks. I would like to go through and let Mr. Ott and Mr. Chmielewski share their revisions with the commission. Mr. Sullivan is going to the traffic committee next week to discuss the traffic calming, the offsite traffic calming solutions or accommodations that we've offered. He's here if you have any questions about that or any other element of the traffic reporting. But at this point, I would ask Mr. Ott to talk about his site plans with you. He appears to be muted.
Good evening, members of the commission. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can. Harry,
I apologize. I seem to be having trouble with my internet connection. It's going in and out on my end. If I lose connection, I apologize. I will call in. Attorney Shansky mentioned comments that we received from Deep. I don't know if does the commission have those comments?
Harry Smith, town planner, yes, they do. And I did mail to them when I received it, your response, probably a few hours ago. So they should have that hopefully as well.
Okay. I don't think there are a total of 8 in his letter. I don't think there's anything critical in his comments. We attempted to answer all of his questions. I think maybe one of the most important ones is he had made in comment number 3, I believe it is, he had thought that all of the building parking level floor drainage systems were not connected to oil grit separator structures, but they are. We explained in our response to comment number 3 what plan sheet and where to look for that connection. And I think that the other maybe substantive comment was that he's asked in his comments that we received yesterday, we had delineated the tidal wetland boundary along the entire parcel's river frontage on the landward side. And he has asked that we delineate the boundary on the waterward side now so that the commission can see the full width of the tidal wetlands. You'll see in our response, we responded that we don't believe that's going to provide any additional information that will help the commission, especially since we're not proposing to cross the tidal wetland and we're not proposing a structure in the river. So if the commission thinks we should have that done, we will have it done and map survey located and put on our plans. But we of course could not get that done between last night when we received the comments and tonight's meeting. I think those are really the substantive comments, unless the commission has any other questions about any of the other comments.
I can put that email up on the screen if the commission would like that. Harry Smith, Town Planner, again. Okay, guess you could proceed about that. Mike, are you there still?
I'm sorry. I heard the first part of your sentence. I'm sorry.
I just stated that I can put John Goucher's email of yesterday up on the screen if that's helpful.
Oh, I don't think so. Thank you. But I'm fine unless the commission needs to go through all 8 of the comments.
Chuck and Chair Harry, maybe you can summarize that when you do your staff comments.
Sure.
That's really all I had regarding Mr. Goucher's comments.
Chuck and Chair, thank you, Mr. Ott. Marjorie, Ms. Shansky, do you have others to speak?
Yes, Mr. Chmielewski will comment. I do want to note, however, that the exchange between Mr. Goucher and Mr. Ott from yesterday and today is the second round of comments. The residual comments that came through yesterday indicating that prior comments have been satisfied through the original exchange that took place after our meeting with him in October. So those materials and the revisions that emanated from that conversation are already part of the record. But Ryan, Mr. Chmielewski?
Sure. Ryan Chmielewski, licensed landscape architect in Connecticut with Weston and Sampson. Just to elaborate on Marjorie's description of the revisions that were made to the public access way along the waterfront, if I could share my screen, it's probably just easier to visualize. I'll just give a brief overview of that, as well as respond to or just provide the feedback you're looking for towards the landscaping, as well as display the revisions to the public access plan based on Harry's comments. So I'm disabled to share screen right now.
I just enabled you. I try it one more time.
Okay, that's great. I'm good. Okay, just as an overview of the project, as you can see down here along the shoreline, you have the 8 foot of concrete sidewalk and the 7 foot of stone on the uphill side. I have an enlargement detail of these that we utilize to discuss with Mr. Goucher. And so this really shows it up closer, 20 scale, where we're almost 12 feet away from the building now. We've put a screening of northern bayberries to provide a little bit more height and just a vegetative buffer between the two rather than just a vegetative seed mix. And then on building C, we've done the same thing. The the walkway is now almost, it's between 14 and 15 feet away from the corner of building C. And we've also increased and added a vegetative buffer on this edge as well, and roll it back up into the hillside. In terms of, while I have the PDF up here, in terms of the,
Can I ask a question about the last one?
sure.
What's going on the slope with that hatch mark?
That is-
area?
Sure, that is a native seed mix, slope stabilization mix by New England Wetland Plants. So that will also provide the wildlife habitat.
So is there a maintenance plan that goes with that, where you're gonna mow it a certain time of the year to?
Yeah, yes, that's just a once a year mowing. Time it in the late fall when the birds are not nesting, if they are nesting there.
Yeah.
Any
Thank
other
you.
questions pertaining to these?
No, thank you.
Great. Great, so I'll move on to the pedestrian access plan. There are some minor tweaks that were requested for this plan. I'll just highlight those very quickly. We've added 2 signs just stating public access. The intent of that was adding them down to the dock to allow people to know that the dock is public access. Even though the brown signs, the kayaking and hand boat launch area indicate that, this just reinforces it with language. We've added the second public recreation space signs. We've added them in 4 locations along the perimeter of that public recreation space that's being that's a part of the plan. We've added the vehicular circulation coming in and out to the public parking. And we've made the connection showing the public access coming in and out of the cafe from this lower walkway. Prior to that, we omitted that pedestrian access point.
Ryan, Harry Smith, Town Planner, this is the plan you sent at 7 o'clock tonight to me?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any questions about this? Great. I'm going to stop sharing, and then I'll just go to just a description of on page 10 of comments received from Harry Smith. He was asking to provide a description of how we tied the more robust planting that was provided in the revised drawings last time around, how we related it to the existing planting scheme and tied it in with the existing development. So part of the changes, we covered the entire building perimeter where feasible with foundation plantings, just like the original building has been planted. We've added small flowering trees to the foundation plantings to be in harmony with the proposed architecture, provide more variation in planting height along the foundation to bring the buildings down to human scale, and provided more seasonal interest. We've added additional trees along the public access walkway to the north of Building D. We've matched, this was stated last time, but I've provided written comment. This was stated in the previous public hearing, but we've matched 2 tree species, 5 shrub species, and 1 ground cover. We changed the palette up a little bit to be more in sync with the town's modern requirements for native species to promote wildlife habitat and more resilient planting. And we've also made specific selections respecting outward views towards the water. And that's all.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, just a couple of other items that are referenced in the planner's report. We submitted a subsequent additional letter on sea level rise that was dated, I think, the 4th of November. And in the planner's report on page 4, he talked about the that my September 14th letter was, and perhaps a commission meeting that may have been subsequent to that, was the last word on the request for affordable housing. And I reminded in a letter to the planner dated today that we had a long conversation on about September 22nd about the affordable housing, recapping the issues that are in my September 14th letter and the journey that this application has made to be as responsive as it has been in terms of pedestrian enhancements and traffic calming and certainly the scope of the public access component. And we did make an offer of a fee in lieu because we recognize that this is an issue that's important to the commission as you embark on adopting some sort of actual regulatory mechanism. So there is an offer that was made back in September. He wanted me to put it in writing, and I did. And that has been submitted to the commission. In his report, he talked again, I'm referring, of course, to the town planner, to a description of the status of the remediation, though I had previously represented that the fill and some groundwater monitoring were the residual components, and then subsequently an ELUR would go on to the property. All of this contingent, of course, on this being an approved development and there being an actual closing of title. But today, the commission has received a letter from Environmental Partners LLC, Paul Muniz, who is the LEP for Anchor Reef Club, who initiated the remediation those many years ago. It is now a deep monitored remediation, and he essentially corroborates the information previously provided about the fill and the groundwater monitoring, and that he does say that the proposed landscaping plans will accomplish the intended placement of 4 feet of clean fill over existing undeveloped grades, thereby allowing the underlying soil to be made inaccessible if protected by an ELUR to be placed on the property deed. So in this respect, and in all respects in the correspondence that the team has provided, we believe we have addressed all of the issues, satisfied Mr. Goucher, and subject to going to the traffic committee next week to see if they adopt on the local streets what we've offered to do on traffic calming, bring to you a very reviewed and including by the Town Center Revitalization Review Board, a very reviewed and approved development that satisfies your ability to make findings. We would submit under your master plan required findings, section 9.10 F6 of the regulations, which I'm happy to go through with you. You have received testimony expressing support for this development, including recently a petition by 40 business owners in Branford who endorse it. And you've had comments from the target sort of market, both young and old, who are drawn to this additional housing option in Branford. And we've certainly heard and read all of the comments expressing concern by neighbors about density and about traffic. We are confident that through the planning of this development that is a part of the transit-oriented district here in Branford and in the town center, and through the traffic studying by Mr. Sullivan and Mylone and McBroom, that we have a development that is eligible for approval, that the master plan is eligible for approval and adoption by the commission, and that the site plan reflects a development that will contribute to the tax rolls in Branford, that will be a draw to quality of life, not only for its occupants, but for the public that is drawn to participate in the public access amenities that we are providing. We would be very happy to entertain your questions.
Chuck Anderson, Chair. Thank you, Attorney Shansky. At this point, we'll turn it over to for our staff comments. Harry, you've prepared an updated staff report. Are there items you'd like to summarize from that?
Yes, there are. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Harry Smith, Town Planner. I'd just like to start with, since it just came in, bring the Commission's attention the petition that was mentioned by Attorney Shansky. And I think I will share my screen and just show you the sheet of that quickly. Should be able to see this up on the screen. This was signed by approximately, as mentioned, by approximately 40 local business owners. We, the undersigned of Branford residents, the local business owners, support the approval of Mariner's Landing. You can read it. This is saying this has been a difficult year for us. Look forward to the opportunity to welcome new residents to the town. Target market for Mariners is perfect for us. Young professionals, empty nesters, active adults. Demographic tends to spend at local business is restaurants and service providers. Construction of the project will be a large contributor to our local economy. I urge you to approve Mariners Landing, support locals, all business owners, and all the signatures here. So this is on the Dropbox now, I believe. And again, all the record is accessible by the Commission and the public on the Dropbox, and that is accessible from the first page of the agenda of this Commission meeting and all the. So just moving ahead to my comment memo. A lot of the items I'll mention have been addressed to some degree. I'll just sort of run through, highlight a few things. Just to start off, I would mention that this is based on prior set of plans. So the revised plans were received after this memo was written. Including the landscaping plan discussed tonight with additional landscaping around the corners of Building A and Building C, as well as the public access plan submitted tonight. So again, I know it was mentioned by Attorney Shansky, respect to affordable housing. I completely agree. We did have a conversation. I did not forget it. I just wanted I thought it was more appropriate for Attorney Shansky to put that on the record, and I did not want to jump the gun by bringing that up. Just a verbal discussion between the two of us without something in the file on it. So we have an offer. All I'll say in response is that it boils down to $10,000 fee in lieu for with the 77 units proposed above what was approved before. So this project is proposing 147, 70 units, if you will, could be built on the site without changing the PDD approval. So it seemed appropriate, part of the discussion, frankly, that at that point, affordable housing was not requested, was not considered by the Commission in the old PDD approval of years ago. So it seemed appropriate to limit any proposed fee to the number of additional units, if you will, being proposed. So that's where that $77,000 comes from, my understanding. Just to give you a benchmark, it's on the record, I think it may be on the record already, that the development very close to this that was subject to a public hearing a few months ago, proposed a fee in lieu of $20,000 per unit that they were discussion on the record about whether that's comparing apples and apples, but I'll leave that. Just we do have the sea level rise letter. I think that gets kind of at what I was looking to have discussed on the record, which was features of the current design that are there to accommodate potential sea level rise. I think the applicant is going above and beyond the actual code requirements, floodplain management ordinance requirements. This is a very kind of murky thing. We don't know exactly what's going to turn out to be the case with sea level rise. There, of course, is the potential spend additional money to protect this development, should that be necessary, from sea level rise and higher flood elevations and so forth, but we don't know what those are going to be. So I was just looking for a conceptual discussion to address what was noted in the plan of conservation development in terms of a concern. So I think that's been addressed. We have the 50-foot setback that has been discussed with the additional landscaped elements and the offset of the actual paved portion of the public walkway. I think that is certainly a step. The 50-foot is, recommendation. Frankly, to meet it, you're talking about clipping buildings. Weighing everything out and trying to look at what's been provided in terms of is it really addressing the intent of separating? I think it does. One thought I had that I did mention to Attorney Shansky is that there are areas along the path that are pretty heavily planted now at the corners. Whether any additional features at some point could be added might be something that could be discussed. Potentially, I could see a group evolving that might want to kind of adopt this pathway along with an extension across Branford Landing and potentially on a boardwalk to be possibly owned by the town all the way over to South Montauk. That's a fantastic potential for a incredible community feature that may evolve into some additional features being put along this path. So subject certainly for some future discussion. It seems like my understanding is the applicant's open to that. So I'll just leave that there. I think that's just an idea that could sort of address this comment a little bit more in the future. But I think without really massively changing the proposed development as far as it's going to take in it. We've talked about the traffic calming, and I believe the commission's aware, but if you want me to get into it, I could show you a graphic, and I won't at this point, but I think we've discussed what the proposal at previous meetings, and we'll just have to wait to see what happens. With response to pedestrian circulation and the coastal greenway, the shoreline greenway trail, an easement has been offered, so we can look at where that should be located. It might require widening the sidewalk along Maple Street out somewhat to provide, if leave that as the desired route. So I'll leave that there. There is a requirement on the north side of Indian Neck Avenue for the owner of that property as part of that PDD, Branford River PDD, to also provide an easement to at least allow a path for a widened multi-purpose path along the side of the road along Indian Neck and now Maple if we get the easement here. So I think that's progress. With respect to the comment a little further down here on the next page about taking the sidewalk up along the, let me show you a plan just so you can see this. You should be able to see the plan sheet from revised plans submitted here on the 2nd, Monday. This sidewalk was missing, has now been added to the plan. I think that's an important connection. Parking here, you can walk down to the public access. Sort of rounds out the whole thing. So that's been addressed. Shoreline public access plan. I appreciate it. Looks like it addressed what I have requested. Go back to the comment down here. I just wanted to make sure all the features that are open to the public are on there and appropriately marked. I'd have to review that since we just got it at 7 o'clock to make sure that's all set. So down here, I think Attorney Shansky discussed this comment I made about having the new residents and tenants of the development be informed about the public access. I think that is very helpful. Possibly having each one sign off. Be one more step I could think would be additionally helpful, but I think that's addresses the comment. Evacuation plan has been discussed. I did not send you the whole thing since it's quite lengthy. Again, it is in the Dropbox and it's been there since well into the beginning of the project consideration. So if anyone wants direction to what exhibit number it is, I can tell you that and make sure you can go find it. Everything's identified by exhibit number in the Dropbox. Let's see, we did discuss the schedule of uses. I think that has been worked out with the possible exceptions was noted by Attorney Shansky of future uses of the cafe tenant space in Building D. So I'm happy to hear that the app open to that being put in a different footing than the possible uses that might be added to the PDD. And should the commission proceed to an approval, I think that could be worked out in some kind of condition that requires additional level of approval consideration and limited kind of uses, because I think that was presented as a public use component. Something that would be a use that's open to the public as a restaurant would be or a cafe, and that's important to animate that public space. I think that's part of the consideration that was put forward for the justification for allowing the PDD. Moving ahead, you've got the required findings. The comments, I think we'll stop here about the drainage. These were from the town engineer. There's another section on drainage later on, but just to get it out, I know the applicant's attorney, Mr. Ott, and the town engineer have had discussions as late as yesterday afternoon about the basis for how the development's going to meet the requirements of the zoning regulations for no net increase in runoff. And part of that, I understand, concerns what is the starting point? Is it the level of runoff of the site back when it was MIF factory and a lot of paved and building surfaces? Or is it how it is now with some grass growing on it and so forth? So they're working that out. I don't believe that's been completely agreed to or finalized. Unless I've missed something, I don't think there's been any additional information submitted about that yet by Mr. Ott. But I just note that that's, I think, to be resolved, but it looks like it's on its way to being resolved. Moving on to the next page here. I'm going to talk about the DEP comments later regarding stormwater, etc. I did, since it was tied into the fire department concerns and their sign off, if you will, on this level of development plans. I did review the proposed toggling, if you will, of the paved portion of the path along the Riverwalk closer to the water and putting all the gravel shoulder on the landward side of the path. With the fire chief this morning, I sent him a copy of the plan that I just had up here. Went up again and showed him this area. While I'm on this, I just want to note that this needs to be tied in. Looks like something that may have been done fairly quickly just to toggle that off, but it doesn't quite sync up with the existing path, at least on the worked out. He was fine with this layout of the pavement being here and the gravel being over here rather than on both sides of the pavement. However, he did make me aware of a additional drawing or annotation to a drawing that I don't believe is in the file. That I will put this up. This is the sheet. So this, I believe, was a document sent by Mr. Ott to the fire chief, and this shows some areas of lawn areas that would be reinforced in terms of their ability to support equipment. There'd be additional gravel put under them so they could support fire apparatus if that needed to be deployed down here. In terms of the outriggers that are used to support the fire equipment when they're going operations in the field. So I just want to enter this into the record and probably double check to make sure, they go out there and deploy out there. They can certainly just crush shrubs down, but, we don't want any large trees being proposed in these areas and so forth. So I'll cross-check that with the landscaping plan if that hasn't been done already.
First.
Sorry? Anyway, so that's, I enter that into the record. And there was a couple emails that went along with that that the fire chief sent over as well that I can enter in the record. Okay, going back. I think the landscaping plans are, come a long way, and I think they address all the comments. However, I would like to take a look at them since they just came in this past Monday to make sure that all the details have been addressed. I mean, it seems like it's in good shape and has addressed all the comments, though. This was discussed tonight, how the revised landscaping corresponds and is keeping with the prior landscaping installed and on the plans. I've got a separate memo on lighting I'm going to pull up quickly. So I did do a detailed review of the lighting plans that were proposed. Generally, the pole-mounted fixtures are dark sky compliant. Lighting levels are not excessive. They're in good shape. They don't generate an excessive amount of light on the ground. Did have a concern with the pole-mounted lights along the pathway, the Riverwalk. The detail shows these poles as being 12 feet, but the photometric plan shows them being 14 feet. It seems like the photometric plan analysis of how many, the foot candles the light generated on the ground is based on the 14-foot height. 12 is what was approved back 15, 20 years ago. Seems like that's what's proposed, but it's not clear since aspects of the plans don't agree with each other. I think it's important that it's 12-foot height. It's a much more pedestrian scale. Might need to adjust the fixture somewhat to make sure it doesn't generate excessive light on the ground. The other concern I had was, well, a couple. One is there are building-mounted fixtures proposed. They seem fine, but the light to be generated by them is not reflected in the photometric plan. The lighting levels around the doorways of the building are pretty much zero or close to it. So that should be looked at, as well as the bollard lights, which there are light levels around them that are higher than underneath the pole lights. And they also aren't indicated as being full cutoff. And, seem to be generating excessive amount of light. So that really, perhaps that's not the best choice for the bollards. Also just want to note there's no lighting proposed in the area right along here, public parking spaces. So there's no pole lighting or lighting over there. That might be something that should be added. We're getting pretty close to the end here. I did have a comment about, and I won't bring that sheet up, but there's soil and erosion control matting all the way along here. It's a little more intensively graded. This is a little more of a slope, gentle slope, but I think adding it here would be helpful to protect the Branford River from any erosion potential during like comment I've had in the plan and in my report for a while. So coming down to drainage, I think I've covered all that. Mentioned by Attorney Shansky, been reviewed by Town Center Village District. I think all of these are addressed. I believe the tulip trees were replaced with an alternative. Frankly, I haven't looked at the last landscape plan, so I just sort of need to double check all of it. We have comments from John Goucher. At this point, we really don't have the final, yes, John Goucher, that he agrees with the comments just received today from Mike Ott. I did forward those to John Goucher after the close of business after 5 o'clock today, and I didn't get a response from him. I think I'd left for the day somewhat after 5. He did send something to me, but by the time I sent the other ones to him, did not get a response back. I did get the letter from Mr. Muniz. Was mentioned by Attorney Shansky. I understand this is within the purview of the DEP in terms of reviewing the work that underway and approving the closeout of the remedial action. So that could be addressed in a condition on any potential approval, or that button down at some point, either for construction on the buildings or before occupancy. Re-subdivision application. So this is the new revised plan, and I will back. So this was just submitted this week. And it shows additions to the public access easement and adjustments to reflect this plan, as opposed to what was in place years ago. And this is Connecticut Light and Power or Eversource easement here. I understand that additional plan is being put together by Mr. Ott with all the easements on it. That really should be part of the record of the re-subdivision application, since that information is required by the subdivision regulations. Also, just go through, there's a few items that are not on here. For example, the signature block is not the town-approved signature block. These statements are required to be on the plan, but they need to be in a separate note. The zoning standard schedule needs to include setbacks. There are just several items here that if you read through the regs, you see that type of stuff just needs to be on the plan. It's not a crucial item, but it's just a requirement. However, how the open space requirements of the subdivision regs will be met has not been addressed. There is amenity level. There is the public open space out here. That I think I would take that as being offered as the open space. We can look at Yeah, I think the intent is there to satisfy it, and I think it is satisfied, but how the mechanics of making sure commission does what they need to say to comply with the regulations. So I really kind of expected a more complete plan, but I think this could be, some of these are not crucial items for making a decision, so it's potential we can put these in as conditions. It was stated by Attorney Shansky that all the site plans should be as part of this application. That does help flush out the material needed to comply with. So that is pretty much it. I just want to note a couple other things. One is there was a fiscal impact assessment, terminology right, submitted, and economists presented testimony back, I think in September. And I just want to note for the record that in my training as a professional planner, and we do cover doing physical impact analyses in planning school, that looking for my memo here. Here we go. There's a methodology and several options to looking at the potential costs of town services. And, this isn't I don't think a regulatory thing. I just want to note for the record that, and I did submit paper here that was presented by Dr. Mullen, who's a, alum of my planning school. This is available at the Lincoln Land Institute. This is they request that there be no photocopying, so I did not photocopy the paper. I did print it out, which is apparently allowed, and I gave you a URL, which is apparently allowed, so you could access it. I'm just going to leave that for the record. So where does that leave us? Closing the public hearing tonight, I think could be done. I would just point out that I think we should provide an opportunity for John Gaucho, DEP, to submit staff a final response to statements of Mr. Ott on the record tonight to make sure all those little loose ends are buttoned up. We're waiting for the town engineer response with respect to the drainage. That could either be handled through comments from the town engineer. He may be satisfied. We couldn't actually put new drainage information into the record if the public hearing is closed tonight. Potentially be a condition of approval. The applicant's willing to live with a condition that says essentially the stormwater management plan needs to be modified to the satisfaction of the town engineer, or something along those lines. We do have some additional information. I haven't gone through every detail of the revised plans. I believe they cover most things. I just want to go through it in detail because I haven't had time. We've got public access plan, which I need to review as well. And we have a new letter from on the project. So I think we can close the hearing. I just think, there may be additional staff comments and reports I'd want to submit just to clarify some of the remaining details before the commission take action. With that, I'll end. Thank you.
Chuck Andrews, Chair. Thank you, Harry. Before I ask the commission members if they have any questions or comment, I want to ask Attorney Shansky, do you have any responses to the comments from Mr. Smith?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Marjorie Shansky. We did receive information about the photometrics questions very late this evening, really, like after 5. I can tell you that the light poles can be 12 feet along the walkway. I have information about the lumens generated by the lighting at the doorways and their dark sky compliance. I understand the sort of considerations that attend closing a hearing or not closing a hearing. We have certainly made our record, except that there are these dribs and drabs, which are not the most significant, but they are not insignificant. And I can appreciate that if it were auspicious and to not close the hearing but with the understanding that we're done with presentations per se, but if it were the commission's preference that the documentary record be completed, that would be our goal. And then you could close and deliberate on the 19th, if that were your pleasure.
Checking to share. Thank you, Attorney Chiansky. I had a question about the open space. Harry, you mentioned that, I guess it was unclear, the open space component of the subdivision regulations, whether the applicant was intending to use the open space shown on the plan, or if it's been designated as to satisfy the open space and the subdivision requirements. Is that accurate, Attorney Chiansky, or do you know how that was to be addressed?
I frankly would like to confer with Mr. Ott.
Okay. Because that's also an issue. Who receives it? Who's the recipient, and do they want to receive it? I mean, is it the town, or I don't know. I don't know. That's always the issue when you have open space. The donee has to want it. So.
No, I can say, or I would offer, that the subdivision element is not part of the public hearing. So that may be something to which we can give you more information.
The re-subdivision, isn't it?
Yeah, actually, it is part of the.
Oh, it is actually. Strike that. I agree. Yep. Sorry. I think we're trending toward leaving the hearing open, but not because we want to come back and present. We want to close all of the issues attending the various plans.
Yeah, I mean, I can mention for the record, Harry Smith, Town Planner, that in the subdivision regulations, there is an open space option under, I'll give you the section 304B.
Mm-hmm.
It says these are the options that may be, through which the open space requirement may be met with the approval of the commission: dedication of land within the subdivision or elsewhere, payment of a fee in lieu of open space, dedication of land and payment of a fee in lieu of an open space, or some other arrangement that shall be found by the commission to be acceptable, such as a streetscape protection easement, a trail easement, a conservation easement, or similar proposal. I think, the land that's proposed to be used by the public could be, and the easement that would be over it might be an other arrangement that the commission can approve, and I think that would probably be appropriate here. I mean, just to mention, I think I did mention, I think all of the public access ways should be included in easement. This includes the field and the sidewalk connection to the north of Building D and all of that. Not on the subdivision plan right now, but that easement plan could be a requirement of an approval.
Chuck Anderson here. Thank you, Harry. So who gets the easement? Is it the town? And is the town willing to accept it? Because
the town already has the easement to the public access trail area and the existing trail and the dock. So I would have to check with the town administration to make sure that accepting an easement for public access to the rest of it's appropriate. But we already do, as the town already has the easement, or half of it, if you will.
Yeah. I assume that the RTM would have to accept the easement, but I just want to make sure it's probable. I assume that they're going to want it, but that's an issue.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, this is Marjorie Shansky. I certainly agree that the language that Mr. Smith read is susceptible of the interpretation of the public access satisfying that requirement. And I'm looking at the existing public access easement, which is recorded in volume 976 at page 271 of the Branford Land Records, and it is to the town of Branford.
Chuck Anderson, thank you, Attorney Shansky. Okay. Any questions before we open up to the public? Any questions, comments from commission members? Hearing none. Any member of the public wish to comment? Caitlin, let us know.
Caitlin here. I'm gonna unmute Michael.
Hi, this is Michael Diodetta. I live in the Anchor Reef condos. I'm currently the president of the association. I have testified at a meeting prior. As I said, we are, as unit owners, we overwhelmingly support this project. And to give you some perspective from our point of view, I moved in here 12 years ago in December, and they were supposed to start this next project 6 months from when I moved in. That was almost 12 years ago. And what we've been looking at is an undeveloped piece of property that's unkempt. There are pilings sticking up. You can't go in. The project seems to me to be the best project for both Anchor Reef and the town. We were really excited about it. And between the tax implications, it's a beautiful project. The access along the river, we're actually very excited about it. And again, I've said this before, but as an association, we are overwhelmingly supporting it, and we are the immediate neighbor. And if anyone has any other questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
Chuck Anderson, thank you very much. Caitlin, are there other members of the public who wish to comment?
Yes, I'm gonna unmute Jeanette Redensek.
Ms. Redensek, you said?
Redensek. Thank you, commissioners and staff. I'll go briefly here because it's a long night and I've spoken before. But to repeat, the project is too large for the community, particularly coupled with the other projects which have already been approved and which are awaiting approval and which have been adumbrated for the future for proposal and approval. The qualities that make Branford such a pleasant community to live in don't happen overnight. They happened over years and years, the investment of time and spirit of the people who live here. But they can be eroded and destroyed very, very quickly by overdevelopment. I ask you most fervently to consider the scale of this project and to ask the developer, who has clearly such credibility and such heart in the project, to make this a smaller project so that it can preserve continuity in our community and not push Route 1 scale development right into the center of the town, separating Indian Neck, Goodsell Point communities from the downtown area by a wall of traffic and a wall of apartment buildings. Thank you.
Dr. Anderson, thank you, Ms. Redensek. Caitlin, are there other members of the public?
Yes, I'm going to unmute Gia Polio.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Gia Polio, 48 Harding Ave. I would like to thank you for this time this evening. Many of the neighbors of the Indian Neck wrote letters to the Planning and Zoning, did not ask to have their letters be read out loud during the meeting. I know the Planning and Zoning members have read these letters and take their commission very seriously. With that said, I'd like to read a few sentences from various letters sent over the last several weeks. They are all part of the record concerning Mariners Landing. Here are some of the following statements. Just because a developer wants to build multifamily housing does not mean they should. Let's think about future Branford generations. Branford is a beautiful town that we are fortunate to live in. I've lived in Branford for 78 years and have seen this town change from a small, prominent shoreline community to an overpopulated condo haven. The road infrastructure is not equipped to handle this volume. Just because there's land doesn't mean it should be eaten up with huge buildings and overdevelopment. The density is too intense. Please don't overdevelop Branford. Why do we have to develop every parcel of land in this town? The river will be lost to the building. We did not move into a city when we came to Branford, but it sure seems to be becoming one. We are busting at the seams. Our town is a treasure. Our river is a jewel. We love our town and want it to remain the way we love our town and want it to remain a town we can be proud of. Those are just some of the statements, sentences from statements sent in that are all in the Dropbox that I'd want to share. And I urge the commission to consider the residents of Harding Avenue, Indian Neck Avenue, and the surrounding area when considering the scale of this property. Thank you.
Dr. Candace, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Polio. Caitlin, are there other members of the public who wish to comment?
Yes, there's going to be a few more. The next is the number ending in 5872.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm going to keep it brief because I know it's been a long night for you. My name is Albert Carucci, and for the better part of a decade, I've been the operator of Shoreline Prime Delis and Meats over on Route 1 in Branford. I've seen the project that's proposed, Mariner's Landing. I think it's magnificent. I think it's to scale. I think it fits well with the community. The demographics that we'll bring into the town of Branford are the type of demographics that are needed to allow our businesses that we have established here to thrive. I can't imagine that any more thought or care could have gone into the development and the foresight into this project. I'm 100% behind it. I've seen it. I don't think it is an overdevelopment. I think it adds to the luster and to the integrity of the town of Branford. And honestly, I think it's something that's needed, an influx of the type of people and the type of character that the river provides for us, and it would flourish the surrounding businesses, which actually during this pandemic were off, and we need the character and the people and the demographics that would actually live in these in the development to be part of Branford and part of our history in the community. And listen, I know many more businesses that couldn't be here tonight that would stand up and say they're 100% behind this development. And it is a beautiful project, and the guys that are behind it thought about Branford in developing it, and they're from Branford, so it's not like they don't have Branford's best interests involved. So thank you for your time here tonight.
Dr. Candace, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Garucci. Caitlin, other members of the public wish to comment?
Yes, I'm going to unmute James Sadagash.
Yes, hi. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jim Satterjay. I'm a Branford resident speaking on behalf of Donovan's Reef Restaurant and Catering, Eliza Sinapis and Steve Sinapis, who could not attend this Zoom meeting tonight. I just want to reiterate the person who was on record just before me put his statement really well. And, I just want to continue by saying, like most restaurants in Branford, the setback caused by the pandemic has put a strain on local businesses. Having a new project like Mariner's Landing will generate a welcome boom to the local economy. As a Branford taxpayer, I feel the property tax that this project generates will be a welcome addition to the grand list. We urge the commission to approve this project. Thank you very much.
Chuck Anderson, thank you, Mr. Satterjee. Caitlin, or the other members of the public wish to speak?
Patricia Dugan.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Pat Dugan. I live at 51 Harding Avenue. It is my understanding that the Anchor Reef development was originally approved with a boardwalk, pier, and dock approximately 10 years ago. It also gave the public access to these amenities. Anchor Reef was never completed. Now, Mr. Maritoli aims to complete this complex. What will be drastically different from the original Anchor Reef plan is the density. 70 units versus 147 more units. 2 buildings versus 4 buildings. It is common knowledge that developers shoot for the stars with their application size, knowing that a more realistic number of units will be approved. I realize that this site has its challenges. Because of that, certain considerations or allowances are given to the developer. The Branford River is a huge selling point to the potential residents. It is that very river that separates the neighbors on Harding Avenue from abutting Mariner's Landing. When considering Mariner's Landing, it is my hope that you will give special consideration to the neighbors of Harding Avenue, as well as the Indian Neck neighbors who will have to tolerate all that comes with this application. I question how the people in this area will get through the construction phase that will last years and leave a permanent mark on the land. The additional traffic will be a burden that we will all bear. How will this area handle the high density of these 4 buildings and the burden placed on our public services? 2 more buildings with a total of 70 more units is more tolerable than 4 more buildings with 147 units. Thank you for your consideration.
Chuck Candace, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Dugan. Caitlin, other members of the public wish to comment?
David Plumey.
Yes, how are you? I'm here. I'll keep my comments short. You guys covered a lot over the last few comments. But I've been a business owner in Branford for 11 going on 12 years. My name of my business is Shoreline CrossFit. We're located over by exit 56. When I heard about this project, Mariner's Landing, and I know a little bit about the people behind it, I was excited. I think this is exactly what the town needs. In terms of my business, we're more of a boutique gym. This type of project would bring the ideal client to my marketplace. 140 plus units to me means 100 plus 40 families or taxpayers to the town. And I think that's what the town of Branford needs: some new life, some young life. And these are the type of projects that we should be involved in. And so in terms of health and wellness, this would be my ideal type of client. I haven't seen a project like this. I've looked at the plans. It looks fantastic. I understand what this type of stuff does in terms of traffic and flow. I do think at the end of the day, when the project is done, it's going to leave a nice mark, a nice impression on the town. So I'll keep it short. I've been on the phone the entire night. But thank you for having me. Thank you for this meeting, and I wish you guys the best of luck in this decision.
Chuck Andrews, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Clooney. Caitlin, other members of the public?
I think that's it.
Okay, great. Okay, going back to does the applicant wish to address any of those comments?
We are aware of the concerns that have been expressed, both positive and negative, and are confident that this development will be absorbed into the landscape and be a contributing development in the city, in the town. The issue, I think, Mr. Chairman, right now is on whether or not we leave the record open.
Chuck Anders, Chair. My sense, my understanding, Mr. Chansky, is it sounds like there are additional plan revisions. There's a John Goucher comment. There's other things that probably need to be submitted and verified. You mentioned you wanted to speak with your engineer. I think maybe we can keep it open for the submission of materials. I mean, if we keep it open, we keep it open. And with the expectation that there doesn't necessarily have to be any additional comments at the hearing, but you can submit it and Harry can verify that. But if we keep it open, we keep it open. Harry, what do you think?
I'm really torn. Harry Smith, Town Planner. I mean, there's potentially, I think everything's potentially addressable with conditions should the commission choose to proceed to approve the applications. But they would be, several conditions, if you will, that would defer final approval of some items like landscaping, lighting, and drainage to town staff. And I don't think that's necessarily unusual, but there's several little loose ends to tie up, unfortunately, assuming the commission wants to approve the project. So I don't want to take that as a given. I just want to point that out. I have to presuppose that if there's an action to approve, that the record is ready and all the details have been addressed. I would note for the record that there was a petition submitted by a number of residents, I think it was 80 something, back in the beginning of the public hearing, and I believe I did read that petition and presented it during the public hearing visually. And I want to note for the record, all the emails that have been submitted have been sent to the applicant as well as mailed directly to the commissioners, so everyone has had access to all those emails and comments.
Ms. Shansky, one of the things we would do is receive comments from the town engineer, receive comments from John Goucher, whatever. I don't know if you'd want to respond to those. That's the dilemma, Mr. Chairman. Marjorie Shansky here. I feel reasonably confident that we have gone through several rounds with Mr. Goucher, and if we're waiting for his all clear letter, then let's wait for his all clear letter and make the record tidy and complete. Then I kind of agree. We've gone to the 99-yard line here. Let's just get it. Let's just get everything in and then close it. So we would keep it open. At least that's my preference, I think. Our aspiration, pardon me for speaking on you, my aspiration is that we get everything in as quickly as possible so that if there were any need for either side to make additional comment, that there was time to close that door as well, so that you really could close on the 19th and have seen the material and be able to deliberate, should that be your judgment. Okay. Because the 19th is our next meeting. We could start deliberations. We only have one meeting scheduled in December. So that's, so you know, time. Does that sound okay to everyone? Other commission members? Okay, I see Marcy nodding her head. Yes, I think that makes sense to everybody. So
I believe, Harry Smith, Town Planner, I believe we have enough time, but we may. I think I would prefer if we got on the record. I think we've used up our 90 days. So, Attorney Shansky, if you would be willing to grant us a time extension on the public hearing to keep it open, I think we're 2 days shy. I will send you a note tomorrow morning. Great. Thank you.
Okay, then. So then what we'll do is we'll continue these matters as a public hearing to our November 19th meeting. Okay. And I have 9:10. We've been at it for 2 hours and 10 minutes. We still have a number of public hearings left, but I'm going to suggest we take a 5-minute break right now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Let's go.
I have. I want to unmute the mic.
Okay, who are we waiting for? I think Harry and Marcy, looks like. Oh, hey, Marcy. Harry, you here? Okay.
I just had my video off.
Okay, excellent. I think everyone else seems to be here, right? So, okay, why don't we reconvene? So now we're on public hearing number 3, which is our continued public hearing for Box Church at 131 Commercial Parkway. And that's, we're continuing that from our, I believe, on October 15th. Is the applicant ready to proceed with that? I think, Caitlin, we need to unmute Attorney Shansky again.
Represent Box Church. I'm here on this application with Mr. Tom Holiva, who is a representative of the church, and with Jim Preddy, who's the site engineer, and David Sullivan, who's the traffic engineer, and Larry Appleton, the landscape architect. We presented our case in chief last month, and we met with the assistant town planner in the first week in October to discuss her comments in her initial staff report. And that gave rise to the submission of new plans, revised plans, and substantially increased landscaping that yielded a new staff report in which many things have been satisfied. This evening, the other element we want to satisfy is that your peer reviewer issued a report. I understand they're here this evening to discuss it. And today, having completed some additional review as requested by your peer reviewer, Mr. Sullivan will discuss with you the responses that have been filed as a result of that reporting. So, in the interest of efficiency, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask Mr. Preddy to share the site plan revisions with you and then proceed with the traffic conversation.
Thank you, Attorney Shansky. Yes, Mr. Preddy, you can proceed.
Harry Smith, Town Planner. I can't hear Jim. I have made him a co-host so he can share his screen if he needs to, but should be unmuted, as far as we can tell.
Check your volume, Mr. Preddy.
Can you hear me now?
Harry Smith, Town Planner. Yeah, we can hear you, but you're
Yeah.
I hear sounds. I don't see much from your camera. Jim, but there you are.
Okay. So
Right.
I'll share the drawings from my my laptop. I don't know why the sound isn't working on there, so I'm going to sort of make do with my iPad here.
All right. I made your iPad a co-host, so you should be able to share.
Okay. So I'll see this.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is just, you know, I don't know if everyone's gotten a chance to go out to the site, but just as an overview, this is what the site looks like now. This is looking from the cul-de-sac into the driveway. This is the beginning of the southerly parking lot, looking at the existing corner of the existing building. That's the existing building. You can see in the foreground the condition of the existing parking lot. There was some repaving done on the main drive that goes to the existing buildings in recent times. These are what's left of the existing very few landscape islands. This is Branford Q and Brew. You can see the buildings have been recently cleaned up and painted, and that's one of the other buildings. That's the building on the northernmost of the three. That's the northern parking lot with the existing cherry trees, and this is the area north of the building that we're proposing to be lawn. And I point this out only because this has been cut multiple times over the years, so it's just very low growth. You can see the power lines in the background. All the significant trees are on the other side of that, and that'll be more significant when we get to the plans. How do I switch this now? So here is the existing conditions plan. Again, this was the cul-de-sac, and looking in was that first picture. I don't know why that yellow box is popping up. This is that power line I was just talking about, kind of runs along this edge to the other building. So all the significant trees are up in this bank. The existing parking lot that I showed you, the existing building that's to be removed. There's that island with the cherry trees. So here's the proposed plan. Basically, we'll resurfacing and some micrograding of the parking lot. We're adding some islands, which I will get to with the landscape plan. We had originally showed the islands in the middle of the parking lot and at the ends, so that they were an island, 10 spaces, an island, 10 spaces. We've kind of staggered it so that the islands in the middle are split instead of back to back, which actually spreads out the trees that are required, provides a little more foliage spread across that large parking lot. There is handicap parking access here. With one of the comments was, about not seeing where the accessible path is into the front of the building. The noted here is a detectable warning strip. There'll be a flush condition at the sidewalk here, and then the entry is right here on this building. There is a bike rack right here next to the building along this major sidewalk. And again, there's a flush condition, so easily accessible by bicycle. So that's just kind of the quick overview. We can go over the comments, what's really changed. And my comments. Starting from the beginning of the staff comments, was a comment about, lots shall be adequately burned, landscape to screen parking lots from the road. As you could see in that picture, the original picture, that the view is very limited to begin with, and we're planting trees and shrubs and at some point a sign, so that the view would be even more restricted at that point. We did add a street tree out at the edge of the cul-de-sac on our limited frontage. We added a sidewalk element along our frontage as well, and from that sidewalk into the site, into the paved area of the site. I mentioned that we're not removing any significant trees. The existing buildings. There was a discussion about, trying to bring the rest of the site into conformance as much as possible. Again, these buildings have been recently renovated. There was an opportunity here, and I'll get to the landscape plan in a minute, but there was an opportunity here to add some vegetation to those existing landscaped or unpaved islands. I think that a lot of so some of the other main items were landscaping, the parking, and the traffic. I have addressed the town engineer's comments. There was a comment regarding the sewer, which we did get approval from WPCA already, but there does not exist on the site currently any permanent sewer easements for the sewer mains that are on site, which is here and here. On our utility plan, I do show that proposed 20-foot wide easement here and a 20-foot wide easement here. One of the other comments was to add, because this is primarily a developed site with existing drainage, it asked us to add hooded traps. So we have in all these catch basins that exist, we've around our site, and that's really influenced by our site. We've added hooded traps on all those catch basins. Let's see what else. I guess it's probably best to show the landscape plan. And Larry Appleton is here. I saw on the line with us. He could kind of go over some of the thoughts, the design thoughts here, so you folks kind of get a better idea of what we're thinking. But here you can see how we, instead of putting the islands back to back, we split them up so that you'll end up with canopy kind of scattered back and forth over this, instead of right down just one strip down the middle, plus with the trees that are on the ends. There was a comment, one of the outstanding comments still was about adding a tree to this island. I neglected to do that because we're adding 3 pin oaks right here, but if to meet the regulations, we need to add the one on the end. We can move one of these into that island, I suppose. But Larry Appleton, I don't know if you're able, if you have audio, if you'd like to kind of just describe your thought process for the landscape.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. I've commercial. The whole thing begins with Commercial Parkway. You're driving up an asphalt road. It's surrounded on one side by everything from construction debris to vegetation that's not exactly cared for, chain link fencing, and you come up through this narrow passage, and you're suddenly confronted by, of all things, a sea of asphalt. So the very first thing I began to do here was to try and do something to this that at least tried to negate this sea of asphalt. And what I chose to do was a number of sweet gum, which were a fastigiate type. Now this is a fastigiate type. It'll go 50 feet tall, but only grow 6 feet wide. Now there's a tremendous drama, like columns, as you drive up this driveway, and then go either into the parking lot or go around the building. But that was the sense I was looking for here, trying to take all the attention and put it on this colonnade. And the colonnade goes all the way around to this other box church building, which is on the opposite end. And then it picks up the existing materials. There's a couple of existing cherry trees, and then tries to blend in with those. You can't. The cherry trees just can't be matched because they're really kind of late in their lifetime. And so what the attempt was to make them, bring them together using a different species, which had different things to recommend it, color, fall color, and whatnot. And then that, because this was a street, we were kind of obligated to start to do some planting on these existing 3 buildings. Now these 3 buildings are blessed with large gas meters and whatnot. They're blessed with signage. They're blessed with even a couple of cameras. They have lighting on them, and they have air conditioning vents out there. It just to try and attempt all these things just makes them more visible. So I chose to go back to this fastigious tree scheme, and these trees, these are all trees, and they're a upright cherry tree like these, and I mingled them in with these. This takes this column line and brings it down in here, and then almost extends it this way, and then the existing cherry trees begin this new planting that goes along the street. So I'm trying to bring as much order to this thing as I can. Now, I think we've really raised Cain with the idea of this being an industrial site. I think that the building itself has a lot of drama to it. And the color in the structure is basically blue, and I felt that all these trees just built up this whole front of this building. We have foundation plantings well beyond 40%, but and we come around here, dumpster and so on and so forth. We come back down to this existing road, and I put 2 or 3 trees on this corner because this was going to be a big grass area, and the grass area it has got to be cleared. It's got to be leveled. It's got to get some topsoil and whatnot, but it'll be a big lawn area. I did not take the entire area for grass. I left some space to do some planting to separate this building from whatever use this area might have. The area will hold at least 3 60-foot tents. So whatever they want to do with it, they can. This planting in the corner was I should have put one of these down here because of the car count necessary. We planted some heavier stuff in here, but one of the problems here is I've got fencing and all this stuff that goes along with it. So it takes some really good size, some shrubs that will get to be pretty good size. And then getting back to this parking lot scheme, if you go look at the easements and whatnot, the way we had this before was sort of like right down the middle. And what we decided to do is that we wanted to, meet regulations, of course, but we took and took the plants that are in here. These plants are all Zelkovas. Now they're big and they're vase shaped, and they will produce, quite a bit of shade. And but you'll still be able to see right across, to the front of the church. There's some drawings down in the corner that indicate what these islands will look like. There was some question as to the exact square footage that I would need for a tree. There was this is a double island, and the double islands in this case all have lights in them, so that the lights can be in this kind of a pattern to fully light the lot, but not have the trees themselves block the lighting that's necessary for the street and for the parking. So I think we pretty well covered the ground, and there are some things that we're kind of leaving. We have to. There's a fence that comes in here, and where it goes, I don't know. It disappears into a lot of heavy brush. There's an existing line of pines in here, and they probably need a feeding. And but this will be a grass strip that will go along the edge of the fence, and everything else will be behind that fence. And then there are some small trees in here that have seeded themselves in. Signage, I haven't had a chance to meet with the church on what they're going to do about signage. I have a sign out here, which may have to be relocated relative to the walkway that's been proposed. Other than that, I think that pretty well covers the ground.
Okay, and just as a Jim Preddy again, as a kind of a reminder, this was the rendering that we had shown at the last meeting. That's the front, and this is the north side, or I'll call the back, but this also has a fairly nice entryway from that northern parking lot. I guess, Marjorie, I'll let you take back over, and then I'll just save myself for questions.
Thank you, Jim. Mr. Chairman, I think this may be when the beta group will talk to you about their reporting. Unless you hear from Mr. Sullivan.
How would you prefer, Attorney Shansky? Would you want Mr. Sullivan to present, or should we ask our consultant to go first?
Mr. Sullivan presented at the October meeting, and I think to make it orderly, this is probably the time for beta group and then Mr. Sullivan's response.
Okay, why don't we do that? So you're otherwise complete at this time, Attorney Shansky?
Yeah, because we understand that the hearing will be kept open for beta group to respond to Mr. Sullivan's response. So that's all we need to do tonight. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Attorney Shansky. Caitlin, did you do the staff report on this one?
Caitlin, yes, I did.
Okay. And is there anything you wanted to add before we went to our consultant?
Yeah, just a few brief things. Like Attorney Shansky said, we met. A lot of the comments I had were addressed. A few that were not was the landscape strip on the south side of the property. It's proposed as grass still, but the applicant has said that they'll put in low plantings. It was just their intention to use that as a snow shelf. Also kind of looking at their new sidewalk, it might be almost better to keep it grass so people can walk on there if need be. Kind of as like a secondary circulation. There's, like I think Jim mentioned, one additional tree on the island in the north parking lot. The proposed lighting, the pole lights still need to be adjusted slightly. They're emitting some light over the property line. That's in the staff report. Not too concerned about it. It's not overly high amount of light, so it should be relatively easy to adjust. I'd also like to see what lighting they're going to be keeping on for security, and kind of a note on the business hours. I know a few of the places there, mainly just one of them is going to be certainly on until the wee hours of the morning. So just kind of getting a grip on that a little bit would be good. As a condition of approval. I'd also still like to see another crosswalk where the stairs are proposed, kind of outside the front entrance of the proposed church. Jim did extend the crosswalk that's proposed towards the entryway to the existing 3 buildings, which is good, but I still think that secondary sidewalk makes, or not sidewalk, crosswalk makes sense, just because it alerts cars to people coming down those stairs from the church. I think they responded to my sidewalk comment the best they could on the property. I'm a little concerned it's entering into the property a little too soon in a kind of a somewhat random part that doesn't give pedestrians the opportunity to kind of pick one way or the other to circulate to the building. So if Jim wants to speak to that a little bit, or maybe Mr. Sullivan or Mr. Miller from the Beta Group can talk to that. Other than that, I think everything else is satisfied. We had a long, nice chat about it, and I think I'm ready to hand it off to Beta Group if that sounds good.
Chuck Anderson here. Thank you, Caitlin. Mr. Rimler from Beta Group, can you review with us your thoughts on the traffic situation?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, so I had reviewed the initial traffic study performed by Malone and McBroom and provided 7 comments that they've responded to with the updated report that was provided this afternoon. My first comment on the original study pertained to conducting a capacity analysis at the intersection level for 4 intersections. US Route 1 at Commercial Parkway, which was the primary concern, along with 3 unsignalized intersections along Commercial Parkway at Montoya Circle, and also at the 2 Walmart driveways. They conducted turning movement counts and adjusted them to take into account the impacts of COVID on traffic, and provided a level of service summary, which indicated that there would be an overall improvement to the traffic operation at the US 1 and Commercial Parkway signal as a result of some proposed mitigation. The mitigation involved increasing some minor timing adjustments, specifically increasing the green time for the left turn movements from US 1 onto Commercial Parkway. So overall, the level of service went from the intersection went from level of service D to level of service C. So I felt that comment has been taken into account appropriately, and I would agree with modifying the timing of that signal. The second comment, I suggested providing a more conservative estimate of the traffic impacts by rather than using the feedback provided by Box Church to estimate the site-generated traffic. They instead used trip generation from the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual. So that increased the overall number of trips to 285 trips during the peak hour. So that was taken into account with the intersection capacity analysis that I just discussed. An additional comment, comment number 3, dealt with providing better pedestrian accommodations. So one of those sub-comments pertain to the sidewalk that has now been provided from the cul-de-sac to the entrance of the parkway. And on that note, I would agree with what Caitlin just commented on, with it would be preferable to realign where the ramp comes into the parking lot. Right now, it's kind of entering within the driveway area. It would be a little safer, I feel, to bring it a little bit further to the north. But other pedestrian comments were providing curb ramps at the building. I see it's been specified on the plan that was provided that there will be a ramp and detectable warning area provided towards the western side of the building. An additional comment dealt with providing curb ramps at the new sidewalk. And I don't know that that was specifically called out, but it appears that that is being shown as the intention on the plan. That might just be something to call out and specify the ramp type. The fourth comment was providing the bicycle rack at the or near the entrance of the building. That has been provided as previously mentioned. Comment 5 dealt with the parking analysis. I had suggested using some data from the Institute of Transportation Engineers Parking Generation Manual to provide a slightly more conservative estimate for the Sunday traffic generated by the church. So it was based on that. Ms. Shansky adjusted the analysis to show, rather than 110 spaces being needed, specifically for the church, 118 spaces. That's been incorporated into the parking summary table. The sixth comment pertained to previously showing 109 spaces for Q and Brews. It appeared that that was based on a shared parking analysis. That has also been updated, and it was explained in the response that the closest approximation was using a bowling alley and basing the number of parking spaces needed on the number of pool tables, since the site functions more as a billiards hall as opposed to a restaurant. Based on my understanding of Q's and Brews and information available on their website, I feel like taking that approach was appropriate. And the final comment pertained to overflow parking. If the parking spaces became completely full, However, based on the revised parking summary and table, and using the 5 spaces per billiards table, that overflow parking is no longer needed. The number of spaces provided would be sufficient. So all in all, I felt like these comments were taken into account appropriately.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Romar. Caitlin, do you have any further comments at this time?
Just so the commission understands kind of the process from here, Mr. Sullivan provided comments this afternoon. Mr. Rimler preliminarily looked at them, and we'll be getting a final memorandum or report from Beta Group based on a complete review of Mr. Sullivan's comments. And I think that's more or less all we'll be looking for. I don't know if Mr. Sullivan wanted to make some comments before we open it up to anybody else, but I think I'm all good. I think the only thing I didn't hear much about was the other intersections aside from Commercial Parkway and Route 1, and maybe expand on those a little bit if anybody else feels the same way.
Sure. So there was some impact associated with specifically the some increased delay for vehicles making left turns out of the Walmart driveways and out of Montoya Circle onto Commercial Parkway. They'll have to wait a little longer for a gap in traffic during the Sunday peak hour when site-generated traffic is heading to and from the church. However, it would be a considered an acceptable amount of increase. The delay is typically measured in terms of level of service, which is kind of like a letter grade. So we're talking about the left turn level of service going from an A to a B at the northern Walmart driveway, from a B to a C at the southern Walmart driveway, and from a B to a C at Montoya Circle. Typically, what we would consider acceptable would be a level of service D or better. So while there might be some minor increase in delay during the Sunday peak hour, it would be considered an acceptable amount.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Romer. Well, before I open to the public, Ms. Shansky, did you, Mr. Sullivan, want to make any comments at this time, or do you want to?
I certainly would like to give him the opportunity.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Dave Sullivan, Malone and McBroom. Joe did a tremendous job. Most of what I was going to try to explain, but he did a yeoman's job explaining our response. The only thing I think I'd like to clarify a little bit more is the Route 1 intersection. It's very complicated to do an analysis there now. We have a couple of things going on, not only COVID, but we have the oldies coming in and we have the oldies improvement. So all those things factored into what we did and looked at for the Sunday analysis. And we used oldies timing and phasing that they had suggested for the post-development phase, since we were adding their traffic as well. So their timings were based on their Saturday analysis. So just to be clear that the existing or background conditions before the church were probably much worse than they would be anyway. I think our impact is negligible. I wouldn't say we're adding traffic and improving things, and I just wanted to make that clear. We're adding traffic and not worsening things. And certainly what we're recommending is whether those are ultimately the timings or not once Aldi's comes in, that the DOT should be alerted that that's not the best timing for that intersection in any case. And as we go through the OSTA process, we'll work with them to get the right timing out there. The bottom line is operations will be fine on Sunday as the morning the morning services end and the second service begins. So I just wanted to clarify that a little bit. Other than that, I really don't have any more comments.
Chuck Candace Chair. Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Maybe what we'll do now is, are there any questions or comments from commission members? Seeing none, then we can open it up to the public. Does any member of the public wish to comment? Caitlin, do you see anybody?
No, I do not.
Okay. Okay, so I think then what we're doing is, am I correct that Mr. Rumler is going to provide a final analysis of, we would continue this to our November 19th meeting, is that correct?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Marjorie Shansky here. I would like to say that I have obtained timing of lighting information that I will share with the assistant town planner tomorrow in response to the question that she raised that remained outstanding. I do have that information for her now. Thank you.
Great. Chuck Candace here. Thank you, Attorney Shansky. Attorney Shansky, you got anything, is there anything else that you or your team would like to present at this time?
I don't think so, Mr. Chairman. I'm heartened by the extent to which the reviewer has already previewed his comments to Mr. Sullivan's responses. So we'll be happy to summarize and look forward to closing the hearing on the 19th.
Okay, well, thank you, Attorney Shansky. So we will continue item number 3, the Vox Church special exception application to our Zoom meeting on November 19th.
Can I ask you a question before we do that?
Oh, Gary, yes, sir.
All right. I'm Planner Harry Smith. If someone could put the site plan back up, I don't know if Kate, you can do that. I just have one question. I'm listening in, of course, and following everything with you, but on the pedestrian access, there's the, as you're coming into the property, there's one line of parking spaces on the northeast corner, yes? Right along there. Is that access way against the slope beyond it really needed? Because that's, I'm wondering if it is needed. It could be a great location for a public walkway, sidewalk. And it seems that the spaces can be accessed from the maneuvering aisle below it, if you will. And is there a real need for the pavement above it near the slope?
Jim Preddy, Chris Gullo Engineering. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Harry, that was really more about, access for the dump truck, for the dumpster, the fire apparatus, not having to make maneuvering turns around that side. If the fire marshal's okay with reducing the pavement there, then
yeah,
that would be okay.
Is it
24
feet? It looks
there
like.
would be, there would be an opportunity for a sidewalk there in that case. I agree.
Could be made one way for one-way circulation, possibly for any vehicle that needs to go through it. So that's another way to narrow it.
Sure, we could look at that and get something back to staff before the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Chuck Candace Chair, is there any further questions, comments by commission members or staff or the applicant? If not, then we will continue this matter to our November 19th Zoom meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. That brings us into items number, I believe, 4, 5, and 6. And 7, actually. Those are all the Metro, well, 4, 5, and 6 are the Metro 375, the PDD Master Plan Amendment, site plan for a mixed-use development and special exception for earth grading. And item number 7 was the zoning text amendment, but maybe we'll do that one a little bit separately. So we have, this is continuation of public hearing. Is the applicant here?
We are here, Mr. Chairman. My name is John Nuff. I'm an attorney with an address of 147 Broad Street. Here on behalf of the applicants, as you noted, there are 4 applications before you. I think, in contrast to some of the ones earlier this evening, I think we're probably pretty tidied up and ready to close this evening, I believe. We received comments from Harry. We responded in a very comprehensive fashion on October 28th. So our responses and revised plans have been in for over a week. I believe that, at least in conversations that we've had with Harry today, that he's largely satisfied with all his responses. I think we have incorporated every one of his suggestions almost to a one. We have a issue outstanding with regard to the shared and cross access that we can discuss, but I think in the interest of time, we might want to have Dave Golubowski quickly run through our response memo, hitting the highlights without getting into like every detail about tree staples and such, but get through those quickly, and then we can discuss any other matters that's on the commission's mind.
Mr. Chairman, David Golubowski, Landscape Architect, TBA Design Group. Again, in response to Harry Smith's report dated October 23rd, there's a letter in the file from PPA dated October 28th, where we basically go through point by point and address Mr. Smith's comments. But also in the interest of brevity, as John mentioned, I did want to note, just for the record, some of our responses, and I'll hit the highlights, not necessarily referring to the plan per se, but specifically there were comments with regard to adding notes about work being supervised by an arborist, and that those notes were added in a few locations and in response to a few comments. Probably most of the bulk of the response was with regard to landscaping. And I would note that the landscape plan has been modified pretty much point by point as Harry Smith had requested, including adding trees in the front yard, trees and landscaping adjacent to the 365 East Main Street side.
What happened to your screen?
In addition, primarily most of the landscape that was added was in the vicinity of Building D, to the rear of that, where it was adjacent to the residential neighborhood. There was one request for including vehicle-rated sidewalk for snow storage, and that change has been made. In addition, there was a request for the applicant to consider adding a small play area, and the applicant has agreed to that request. So adjacent to the clubhouse, we've added a small tot lot, including a swing and a climber type apparatus. And I think there was also a comment made with regard to earthwork and acknowledging that there may be some rock removal in the vicinity of Building D, and that was addressed in the comments. And finally, there was an issue with regard to the sign location out in front, being within 10 feet, the 10-foot setback, and that's been modified accordingly. So that's the sum of the issues that were outstanding in the October 23rd memo. And with the exception of the cross-access issue that Attorney Nuff had mentioned.
And if we could just discuss that one issue just for a moment. We had indicated at an earlier hearing that, we just don't think that is functionally relevant in the context of a multifamily community. And we looked carefully at section 5.3.d of your regulations, and we think it just doesn't meet the standard. We're required, you define a major traffic generator, not the way the statutes do for OSTA, but your definition of a major traffic generator is a use that generates 30 peak trips per hour or greater. We have about 5,200 square feet of commercial space. It's going to generate about 20 spaces, generate 20 trips per hour. So it doesn't meet that 30 trip per hour threshold. So we don't think that this applies because you only apply it to the commercial aspect of the site, not to the residential. And then we also conclude in our memo that we just don't think it's feasible or warranted in the context of a multifamily community. I think it's interesting that in your regulations 5.3D, there's 3 separate call-outs for an exception. So it's where possible, wherever feasible, a modify or waive. So I think even the regulations contemplate that this is not a one-size-fits-all regulation. You know, you have references to a continuous service drive or cross-access corridors. I mean, that sort of cross-access is, certainly relevant and appropriate in certain commercial retail settings, big box stores, power centers, regional shopping malls. But in the context of, this very, very small context of a small retail building next door, a car wash on the other side, and then having, multifamily community with a mere 5,000 square feet of commercial space generating 20 peak hour trips, we just don't think it meets the standard, and it's just not warranted under your regulations. So we're happy to discuss it, but we really strongly prefer not to provide any cross access. We don't think it's warranted. In terms of everything else, I mean, we're happy to discuss whatever issues that are on the commission's mind. Our full team is here, John Wicko and Dave Sacco. But I mean, I think we're at a point that we have addressed everything that Harry has asked us to address. I think we've addressed all the comments and questions from the commission, and including the addition of additional affordable units. So we're all here to answer any questions.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Thank you, Attorney Nuff. Harry, do you want to review your updated report?
I'm sure. Harry Smith, Town Planner. I'm just going to highlight a couple of things that I've either not come to a conclusion on, but I think there's very few things remaining here, and I think the applicant's done a fabulous job of responding to all the comments, both rounds of them. The one thing, I'm going to share my screen here. Okay. Show the plan. So you should be able to see what is the landscaping plan, I believe, from the revised plan submitted late last week. So right here, there is a tree to remain. Right in this spot here, it's not shown as large as the 2 trees to be proposed here, but there is about, I guess it's a 19-inch Delcova. The sidewalk comes across here in front of Building A to the sidewalk currently exists along East Main Street. It's about maybe 8 feet. I think the drip line, when I sort of stepped it out, was about maybe 18 feet. It's certainly, I think, be preferable if that could be relocated. I believe the applicant said there are grading issues with toggling the sidewalk over. I know there's a bus stop over here, the other side of East Main Street. They want to, provide access close to that, and that makes sense. But I'm still wondering, and I don't know if I completely understand the grading concerns there. So, I mean, I think a lot of care has been noted in the plan as to what will happen. That area needs to be excavated near the root zone, and to make sure it's done in a way to minimize any potential damage to the tree they want to keep, that everyone wants to keep. So I'll just leave that out there. Maybe the applicant can respond to that a little more. That's my other comment had to do with this area back here. It's sort of more at grade, 2 residential buildings back here than I thought. Solid leaves down. So the applicant has gone ahead and proposed looks like a full bore residential district buffer in compliance with the regulations. I've not checked all those specifics. There's requirements for a certain percentage of plants, of evergreen and this and that, and I haven't had a chance to do that, so I just want to make sure that's compliant, but it seems to be pretty robust. Hit all the necessary notes as far as I can tell quickly in the visual. Here, there's a cluster of trees to be preserved, and I was a little unclear about the tree protection area. I think that's been elaborated on in the narrative comment that was submitted back, response. Want to make sure I've got a handle on that. Other than that, there was a modification requested for the tree staples, and we can handle it. It's not a problem. We do note staking, so I have to mention. I think actually that is really it for the site details, with the exception of it was noted, I think, in the comments just a moment ago that there will need to be some blasting or ledge removal underneath the footprint of Building D. I just want to note that that's just about 50 feet from the property line, so that does not run afoul of Section 8. And I believe just noting that somewhere in here, there may need to be some blasting, meets the requirement for noting on the plan where any blasting might be needed. And we can certainly, should the commissioner choose to approve the application, look at, the conditions for pre-blast surveys and so forth that we've been including with other approvals that would blast. Bringing us down, I think. Oh, actually, I have a couple of more things. I believe we've gotten a response from the town engineer. I just was combing through the record to make sure I'd seen it. But I will double check with him. I believe he was satisfied with the response to his initial comments. But it's possible for some reason that's not in the record. I certainly don't think it's warranted to propose keeping the public hearing open for that. It would simply, I think, be a staff report that submitted after the close of the public hearing. But I believe that I just make sure that button down. I'm not even going to go in the sign. I had a comment about that. I think the 10-foot's been addressed. I'll cover that later about light and dark signage and the internal lighting of it. I think that brings us down to access. Let's see. I'm just going to pull up the zoning regulation quick just so everyone can see it. This is the section. I understand what the applicant's saying about concerns about primarily residential development. However, there is a commercial component in front. And I just want to point out my take on it. And I've checked with a couple of people. I think there are two ways into the regulation here. One is through this adjacent properties classified as major traffic. That generate more than 30 peak hours of trips. I don't think that's the case here. I think number two creates a second way of access. It's not subsidiary to one. The applicant thinks if you do not pass this test, this does not apply. I think it's not as clear as it could be, but I think the wording contemplates that come in under this or come in under new commercial, retail, and service uses. And the goal here was to establish a system of shared use driveways and cross-access easements. This regulation goes back to the access management study for North Main Street and Route 1, and that in its implementation in the major overhaul of the zoning regulations in 2011, created an access management district all along Route 1. So there are actually several maps in the access management study that show how individual properties with small amounts of commercial development, like the frontage of this development, property 365, and potentially what might go in at the car wash. Right now, the car wash doesn't make any sense to tie into this development from an access perspective, I don't think. And you couldn't do it anyway because you're not in control. That property's not before the commission. But I think the study, the access management study that was the genesis for the access management district, contemplated connecting as many of these small retail developments to minimize curb cuts on Route 1 where possible and, mitigate the impact of people going in and out of driveways as much as done. So, I will certainly leave it to the commission. And as a commission, you are the interpreter of the regulations. Also note that, this is a PDD, so regardless of how you interpret the reg, you could potentially require a future inspection, which could involve something as little as an agreement to if car wash property came in and if proposed for a use that made sense to tie into the commercial part of this development, only at that point would the applicant be asked for an easement to that property. So that an easement would not necessarily be sitting on the record the whole time. So there's a couple ways to address it. I think the connection they have now to 365 property is, which is right here, and that's the connection right there. I think it's important to maintain that. I mean, these two properties have been linked over time. Right now, as you go into Dave's property, you can come in this driveway and drive right up. That, of course, doesn't make any sense, and I think this is a nice enclosure of the 365 Main Street property. It's proposed by the applicant. I think that's great, and creates a nice area for that, isolates it from the residential development up here. I think it's important to maintain this connection here between the commercial uses and the bottom floor of A, 365. Also, one last comment, there is traffic light about here, and the ramp comes down from exit 55 southbound, the exit ramp right about here. At some point in the future, should these properties common ownership, and leave this to the future property owners, I hate to see that potential to pick up a fourth leg of the intersection, signalized intersection on Route 1, be lost. And that certainly would be the ideal way in here. And that's more to the point of trying to connect my mind. I did make a comment about relocating the dumpster here and the transformer so that at some distant point, should it be desired by the property owners, it could run a road down to fourth leg of the intersection. So I will stop there. This is in pretty great shape, I think, as a plan, and I think public hearing could be closed here, and commission could, think about the access question and figure out how you want to read it and what you want to do about it.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Thank you, Harry. Are there questions or comments from commission members? Seeing none, let's open it up to the public, see if there's any public comment. Caitlin, does any member of the public wish to comment? Caitlin, do you see anyone?
I don't.
Okay, then we'll turn it back to the applicant. Let me ask on the question of the cross easement issue. You heard Harry said that it's not appropriate now and it may never be appropriate. However, one possibility may be that should there be, I don't know, a change of use or something in the future, that maybe we could require it at that time, or we have authority to require it at that time. Apart from the issue, and I think his point was apart from the issue of how you read the regulation, that again, we're creating a new zone here, and we kind of have authority to do this. So but doesn't mean we ever should or whatever. But anyway, do you want to comment on that?
Mr. Chair, we're more than happy to take the guidance of the commission. It was just a difference that Harry and we had in reading the regulation. Obviously, we don't think having traffic on a predominantly residential property is something that is, something that is desirable for us. However, if you feel and the commission feels it's necessary, I think the regulation reads in such a way that you really have discretion. It says feasible where possible. It's kind of a common sense question, I think. I really don't think it's an absolute direction. And I'd leave it up, I'll leave it up to the commission to tell us what you'd like. If you'd like an easement in the future, on the approval that says we'll provide it, we're happy to do that. Again, this is a common sense question, and we'll leave it to the commission.
Well, thank you. Does the applicant have any further comments at this time?
I think the only comment, David Goloviewski, again, landscape architect, TPA Design Group. I know Harry loves this Zelkova tree that's out in front, and he's asked about it at least 3 times. And I think the applicant would stipulate that in addition to having the arborist on site when work is done adjacent to this tree, that we will do everything possible, including jogging the walk slightly to avoid any damage to this tree. We feel it's important to the streetscape and to our view from the road, and we'll do what we can to protect it during construction.
Chuck Anderson, thank you. Any further comments from the applicant?
No, Mr. Chairman, I certainly appreciate the commission's attention and Harry's close scrutiny of this application, like all of them. But I think I'm not pointing the finger at myself, but at TPA, because I think they've done a really wonderful job responding to everything that Harry has asked. And we look forward to closing the hearing and getting a positive vote in 2 weeks.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Nutt. Are there any questions or comments or anything else from the commission members? Okay, I hear none, so then I think we can close this matter as a public hearing. I know it's 10:25, but maybe we can talk about it a little bit, after we complete our public hearings, because to see where we are. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, we also have the text amendment. That's next.
Right.
The zoning text amendment. Again, that was that had to do with the maximum building height. Does the applicant have any further comments on that?
No, Mr. Chairman, you may recall, and John Nutt for the record, you may recall that a couple of weeks ago when we opened the hearing, we talked about Harry's concern with how this regulation could be misapplied in certain contexts, and we had suggested, and I think Harry was on board with this, that we could limit this regulation to areas where the underlying zone or the original zone was in a business zone or commercial property as compared to residential property, and we're certainly happy to do that. I just want to note that while we're proposing to measure to the midpoint of the roof, the highest roof that we have, even to the highest point, is less than 42 feet. So, as I said a couple of weeks ago, this is a very modest request that's going to pay very big architectural dividends. So, we think it's entirely appropriate. Will make for a far more attractive development, and we can limit it to business zones the way I just indicated and the way Harry had requested.
Understand. Thank you, Attorney Nutt. Harry, do you have comments on the text amendment?
I do. So this is I'm going to share my screen again. Hang on a second. Everyone should be able to see yet another staff report with yellow on it. At this point, as was mentioned by Attorney Nutt, there's been a slight wording change proposed, which is the text underlined here, which would exclude the application of this to non-business districts as noted in the zoning regs. I've also suggested down at the bottom here an additional a setback, if you will, from a residential district buffer. My concern here is that the PDD allows 40 feet of height already. And with the change, there's a little bit of potential for a loom factor. I have received some comments from a member of the commission who is certainly more than capable of speaking for himself regarding some of this. And I certainly will let that person talk about it should they wish. I think I have their written comments. I can put them up. And given the hour and the fact that this application does not need to be, let's put it this way, I think there's a lot of different ways to look at this and slice this, but I'm supportive of whatever change is needed to allow this development with the two buildings, I think, that are slightly over 40 feet to get approved. So I think in terms of possibly deliberating on the other applications, we could keep the public hearing open for this to hear the comments from one of the members of the commission and to possibly work out weeks to this and wrap that up at the next meeting and then be ready to vote on everything at the next meeting. But I'm going to stop there and see if the commissioner who made some comments would like to go through them.
Chuck Annis, Chair. Is Commissioner Mr. Chadwick?
Without naming names. And again, I can put those up if you want to.
Why don't, Joe, what are your thoughts?
Yes, I regret having gone off chasing squirrels on the previous discussion in the last meeting. But had two editorial comments based on a just distressing lack of definition. The definition, as it's stated, does not give us a point from which we measure. The fact that we don't define structure anyplace is also a problem. And in this particular case, where you really have just a facade element, the actual roof structure is somewhere far beyond there, and the definition works against itself. So since we're dealing with simply a formal arrangement, I was proposing that we would be measuring vertically from the finished grade centered on the gable to the midpoint of the triangle superimposed on the gable face, whose descending edges align with the apparent roof surface and whose base aligns with the roof eave. This gives us some points certain to do the measuring with. We are not arbitrarily using terms like structure, because I'm sure I could go to this building with a chainsaw and cut off the gable face and the building would not fall down. It is not the roof structure. So from that standpoint, I think these are just editorial changes that increase the precision a little bit as far as what we're measuring to. I could get into at length about the discussion of average grade, which we don't have time to tonight, and we don't have the direct application of that in this particular definition. But like I said, it's a fairly simple editorial change. It gives some greater precision to the definition, and that's it.
Harry Smith, Town Planner. There's a little bit more context to this, which is we have basis for the measurement point, if you will. Average grade, there is a definition tucked in the definition section. And we use the lower of the average grade of pre-existing grade or the finished grade. There were some issues that I understand back. Again, I think that goes back to 2011 also. There were issues with some property owners raising grades on properties and then opposing high finished grades to get their structure up over their neighbors, primarily along the shoreline. So that's one reason why we went to, the commission at that point went to average pre-existing grade. I take your points on number 2 and 3. I think that makes sense. 2 makes it much more specific. And I understand it would sort of address the issue of a gable that's kind of used as a parapet, if you will, without a structure behind it. And number 3, it's a question of how you get at this. I mean, I think you could certainly back off from that and defer to the commission, which has the leeway with PDDs to set the height and not worry about it going to the max. And there is a loom factor that becomes apparent because of the context of the surrounding structures. And that can be dealt with by the commission in the context of that PDD consideration. And the height could be limited or structures moved or relocated or whatever adjustment would need to be made could be made that way, as opposed to a blanket prohibition, which I proposed, which, I think I was just trying to be more proactive about it and keep the current limits in the residential zones. But I mean, I'm open to have it being a different way. I just think the only concern I really have is sort of changing the starting point we've been using to measuring building height, because it's been working for almost 10 years, and most of the folks making applications know how to do it, and it's not unusual in terms of other communities. I'll just leave it there, and maybe we could keep the public hearing open on this one, and that would give myself an opportunity to talk to the applicants and see what concerns they may have about it. I would imagine maybe if it doesn't affect their development, they're not too concerned, but I just want to provide that opportunity and without delaying things any.
Chuck Andrews here. Thanks, Harry. There is a definition of the word structure in regulation.
There is, and we sort of float on it's anything that requires a building permit, and that is defined in the building code what structure is. But I think I get the point right. We're talking about roof structure, and I think, Joe, your concern was what if there actually isn't a roof structure behind the parapet, so to speak, type of feature. Is that right? Did I get that right?
Well, it's actually the delta between the roof structure and there's a horizontal, there are many different kinds of structures. There's structure that provides, just the fact that there are many kinds of structures. There are structures that provide lateral stability. There's a structure that provides gravity loading. And which structure is it? In theory, even if it's just a false front, it has some amount of lateral stability in and of itself, and integral to itself. But just simply by saying the structure, it's just ambiguous as to what structure, and it's converting this into a different function. We're dealing with a formal aspect of building on a site in a context and trying to reference that to something that has an integral function to the building as opposed to a decorative feature that actually provides a visual impact. I think that sort of muddies the concept of the definition. We're concerned about the visual effect of height, and we need to be measuring the visual effect of height and indexing that to characteristics that we can point to.
Mr. Chairman, can I respond, please?
Certainly.
I certainly understand Mr. Chadwick's points. I just want to make a couple of points. Our proposed regulation talks about a gable roof design. So we understand that it's, I don't want to say it's not a true gable roof, but it's a gable roof design. I think we all know what we're talking about when we say to the midpoint, but we can make this really, really simple and just get away from measuring to the midpoint and get away from what constitutes the structure. Our tallest building, and we're measuring the height as Harry just described and as described in your height definition. So we're not relying upon the PDD height issue, but we're going back to basics, going to the definition of building heights. We can just say that in the PDD, if you are incorporating a gable roof design, you should be the highest point should be no higher than 42 feet. That way, there's no question about what's the structure. It's just that if you are designing a gable roof design, when I don't think there's any question we have that, we can just say you should be no higher than 42 feet. And you can only get those 42 feet if the underlying zone is in a business zone, if that's an extra precaution that Harry wants to take. I think, maybe we're too clever to start with, but, this is a really, really simple fix. We're asking for 2 feet.
It's a one-time use of the regulation. So we know exactly what the buildings are. Why can't we just say, here's the buildings, here's what they look like, here's the highest point, and that's it? Because I could see this issue if we were modifying a regulation for everyone. You really need to be specific on all the issues brought up and by the commission member. I think it's all on point and correct. But because it's just a one-time development and we know what the buildings are, why can't we just show the building and say we're not going to go over 42 feet to the highest point? It's because, again, this doesn't get redeployed as a regulation to another project.
No, I understand that. And if we make it site-specific by putting it in a PDD and 150 feet from a residential district boundary and so forth, it kind of limits it.
I don't think you put it in just the PDD. I think it has to be in the regulation because otherwise we're still subject to the 40-foot limit. I think there is an easy fix. I would be concerned about keeping the hearing open, and because I think you need to close it and vote on this in 2 weeks, the same time you vote on the PDD. I don't think you can vote on the PDD and then not vote on the height regulation amendment.
No, I totally agree, Harry Smith, Town Planner. I think you could, though, keep the hearing open to the 19th, close it, and then vote on the regulation amendment. And then you would have to set the effective date of that before the effective date of the PDD approval and the site plan. I think if you set it up that way, it would work.
Right. I think if you want to keep it open, if the solution that we provided, which I think is really simple, if that somehow does not suffice, we can keep it open, close it on the 19th, and then you can vote on as Harry just said, then you can vote on the regulation amendment and then vote on the other applications all in one evening.
I just think it'd be clear to have what you're saying in writing, Mr. Nuff, so that in the it's available should anyone want to comment on it.
No, understood. I mean, so long as we don't get carried over into December, I think.
Yeah, I think there's a way to do it without delaying anything.
Yep. Okay, that's fine.
Okay, yeah, the only, you said just make it 42 feet with everything else in there. And I suppose that would allow non-gable roofs to be 42 feet.
No. So you would keep the language that says, that incorporates a gable roof design.
Okay.
I mean, otherwise we would just change the regulation, 54E1. But I think you want to encourage better design, and this is a way to encourage it.
Okay, yeah. So you keep that in there, and then you just put it to 42 feet. Okay.
I would be happy to read it to you if you're under the if you're predisposed to closing this tonight. Here's what I would say. Notwithstanding anything in these regulations to the contrary, when the proposed building incorporates a gable roof design, the maximum building height shall be 42 feet. Period.
Okay.
And if you want to deal with the residential aspect, we can also add, if the underlying zone is in a business zone. I mean, I don't know candidly, I don't know if it's worth it at this point for 2 feet.
I'm not. Personally, as staff, Harry Smith Town Planner, I'm not concerned about the 2 foot. So, I don't know if you need that amendment for the business district. And again, I think Joe makes a good point that it's should be considered, I think, in the context of surrounding structures and so forth. And, U.S. control and a PDD, this is all within the context.
We can close the hearing if you want. You can do either way. You can close the hearing and still modify the text after we close the hearing, as long as it's within the scope of the notice, as long as we don't go crazy and start amending other sections of the regulations.
Yeah, and you've got a clear, proposed modification on the record, and frankly, it hasn't been a lot of public interest in the whole application anyway, the whole development.
Yeah. My suggestion would be to close the public hearing, and then maybe you and Joe can talk.
Okay. And one last, Mr. Chairman, we do have a bit of a concern about the 150-foot provision that Harry mentioned, but it sounds like that's off the table. But we just want to make sure that it is indeed off the table.
I don't feel any need as staff to propose that in view of what you're now proposing as a modified amendment.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
That's all we have. Thank you.
Okay. Joe, anything?
Nothing more from me. Thank you.
Okay. Do we ever open this up to the public?
I don't believe that's happened yet.
Okay. Any other questions, comments from commission members before we open up to the public? Okay. Any member of the public wish to comment? Caitlin, do you see anyone who wants to comment on the text amendment? No. Okay. Then I think we're good to close this matter as a public hearing as well.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got everything on the record. Okay, so we'll close this matter as a public hearing. Again, maybe we'll talk a little bit about it. It's at 11:15. Okay, so that brings us then to item number 8, special exception for home occupation. 31 Buena Vista, Deborah Gottschalk. Is the applicant here on that?
There she goes.
I'm here.
Okay. Good evening. Would you like to present your application?
Sure. So let's see. Start here. So I'm seeking approval to operate a part-time mental wellness counseling practice from my 200 square foot home office building located on the property of my home at 31 Buena Vista Road in Branford. I'm a licensed professional counselor in the state of Connecticut and a registered art therapist. My business name is Create Mental Wellness Counseling, PLLC, registered with the state of Connecticut. I hold both professional and general liability insurance. As a sole practitioner, I plan to provide virtual and in-person counseling sessions to approximately 8 to 15 clients per week, one session at a time, during weekdays between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Clients will park in my driveway and there's no signage that will be necessary, or that I do not plan to put up signage. There will be no exterior or interior renovations made to my home office studio. The home office studio has electricity, internet access, heat, air conditioning, smoke detector, CO detector, fire extinguisher, and it contains office furniture, office supplies, and non-toxic art supplies. There is no water connection in this building. Due to the private nature of my work, I don't anticipate traffic, noise, or other environmental impact on my neighbors. I did send photos. I'm happy to share those on the screen if you would like. Basically, this building, I've been living here for over 20 years. This building was a garage many years ago, and it is now, was renovated a number of years ago. It's enclosed space, and I use it for my home office. And because it's detached from my physical home, it's about 6 steps from my house to this building. That's the reason I'm applying for the special application.
Chuck Andrews, Chair. Thank you, Miss. How do I pronounce your name? I don't want to.
So the S is silent. It's like got milk, but it's got chalk.
Got chalk. Okay,
Yep.
Thank you. Caitlin, did you prepare the staff report on this?
I did. So, I mean, Deborah pretty much explained absolutely everything. Normally, a home occupation would just require a permit, but if it doesn't meet any one of the criteria, it gets kicked over into a major home occupation, which requires a special exception. In this case, she didn't meet the criteria that it be within the principal dwelling. So, because it's in an accessory structure that's existing. I don't really have any concerns from a planning and zoning standpoint. Special exceptions usually require some additional landscaping and things like that. It seems like it's pretty well wooded to begin with. It's rather close to the house. And usually we waive landscaping requirements for residential uses, which this essentially is. It's an accessory to a residential use. And I think really the only outstanding comments is really actually going to come from fire and building, which I believe Deborah is working with them pretty closely to work out everything she needs to do on that end. But I don't really have any comments outside of that.
Chuck Andrews, Chair. Thank you, Caitlin. Any questions, comments from commission members before we open up to the public? Seeing none, does any member of the public wish to comment on this application? Caitlin?
I don't see anyone.
Okay, I'll ask one more time. Any member of the public wish to comment? Nobody, Caitlin?
Nope.
Okay. Then we'll close the public portion. Ms. Gottschalk, do you have any further comments? Any concluding comments at all?
No, thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any questions, comments from any commission member or staff? Then we'll close this matter as a public hearing. I hope that we can take this up in a bit. Thank you. Okay, so then that brings us then to our minutes from our October 15th meeting, which were, I believe, either sent out or circulated. I think Michelle sent them out again by email.
Chairman, Harry Smith, Town Planner.
Yep.
There are a couple of kind of formatting things, so I might suggest that I work those out with Michelle, and you can table this possibly to the next meeting on the 19th.
Okay, thank you, Harry. So we'll table the minutes. Any correspondence?
There are a couple of correspondence items with respect to cell phone, the typical equipment swap on 272 East Main Street, and actually radio equipment at Branford substation, actually for Eversource. So this is installation of an omnidirectional antenna on an existing 50-foot pole and radio equipment, not quite a cell tower. And then there is another cell tower modification on 123 Pine Orchard Road, and this is an equipment swap. That's what we have.
Thank you. Okay. Let's bring up, at least for a quick discussion, some of the couple of the items that we discussed from the public hearings. We closed the MetroStar public hearings. That's for the PDD, the exit 55 project, both the PDD and the text amendment. We're going to need a written resolution on these, but before Harry can write it, let's. I thought it might be good to discuss this as a matter as to what direction we're headed. I'll start since I'm just speaking here. Again, this is the exit 55. To me, it sounds like there were a couple issues. I mean, the bigger picture is the place is a mess. It's a nice upgrade. It has a mixed, a small commercial. It's mostly residential, but it does have a mixed use component. And one of my main concerns was the affordability stuff. I think when you're putting a whole bunch of new units in, you should have some sort of affordability component. We've been emphasizing that. And the applicant did step up. And so I think it's now up to 8, which makes it over 5%. 5% of the units affordable. I think that's a good faith effort. And its actual units in the development. It's not like we have, we're sort of going ad hoc here. So that's good. The other issue I think that Harry mentioned was the access management issue about a potential easement on the adjacent property owner. And I'm inclined, my preference would be to have that as a possibility in the future should the use change, and we do want it, but not necessarily, just have the option in the future should it be required, should it be appropriate, to require an easement in the event that the commission deems it appropriate in the future for a similar type of use, but not necessarily do it, but just have that option. So in any event, those are my thoughts about that. What do I don't know if we want to go around, but what do other people think? Why don't we go around? Why not? John, what do you think? John, you're on mute. You're muted. You're muted. Yeah.
Sorry. All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. John Luss, Commissioner. I'm certainly happy with the affordable quotient. I agree with you on the access easement for future, not to have it in place now is necessary. I am not really too concerned about the 2-foot height. I think as a PDD, we have the authority to approve it, with some of the conditions that you mentioned. I think that's it. That's my comment. I think overall it's a nice project, well thought out.
Great. Thanks, John. Joe Chadwick, what do you think?
Well, they did make the concession for the affordable housing. That's good. The extent to which this is all, luxury apartments and stuff, I kind of scratch my head with the all the vinyl siding and plastic trim that's on. That's not really within our jurisdiction to comment. Don't believe the crossing business is a real worth. It's not a hill to die on, and it's not something I care to fight over, because trying to maintain control of a residential site is difficult enough without having to share access with other commercial property. And as far as the 2-foot height, I think when I started chasing this squirrel down the street last week, I said, we need to do this regulation, because we're set. It could be inherent within the PDD, but I guess now that we're all tired, 2 feet doesn't make a big difference. And that's it.
Thanks, Joe. Joe Vayuzo?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good. No, I think this is a real nice project. It's going to make a major improvement in that whole area there, and what John said is exactly echoes what I'm thinking. So I'm totally in agreement with this project.
Thanks, Joe. Marcy?
I've been trying to get my head around the location of this project and the way it's being presented as luxury. I think it really lends itself to more affordable than, but obviously there's cost considerations in doing any project, which, is a density kind of question and density appropriateness. I think, the site, for the site itself, I think the density is fine. Do I think that there's, we shouldn't be getting a little bit more affordable, or focusing on at some point what those affordable, which projects should have affordable and which shouldn't, and what makes sense and what's feasible and fiscally appropriate. But, I think it's a huge improvement for the area. Absolutely. So, I'm like I said, I'm going back and forth about whether residential is really appropriate here. So I really kind of hanging my hat on the fact that there's mixed use, which would lead me to want to have the option to connect it in the future if it becomes more of a commercially oriented project. Say some of those first floors get converted, or become more office uses than apartment uses. But it's a beautiful project for sure. The height consideration for this as a PDD, I'm not all that concerned. I am concerned on just formulating the right way to word it, as based on what Joe has said. I think, he has some really good language ability to formulate it. And if we can do it in a way that's not going to upset the apple cart with what people already know how to calculate height, then I think, there's some room to modify it. But, there's a lot of good things about the project, and, I'm still kind of thinking about it, to be honest.
Check in here. Thanks, Marcy. Yeah, no, okay. So I think what we're going to do then is, at least to give Harry direction to draft resolutions, it's going to be positive resolutions for all these things. And then we can talk about it more in detail. But and then there may be some tinkering with the text of the amendment as well. Harry and Joe can talk about that. So does that sound okay with everyone? I mean, everyone sounded positive about it, so.
Yes.
Okay. Great.
Thank you.
Gives you direction. Okay. So then that's on those numbers. Then the last one is the public hearing for 31 Buena Vista, the special exception for the home occupation. And then I believe, Caitlin, you had some suggested conditions on that.
So I just have one finding prepared, and it's that's subject to the compliance with the adopted conditions listed below. The commission finds, based on the testimony and application materials presented, that the proposed use of the property is consistent with the special exception criteria. Just have 4 conditions. Any exterior modifications or expansion of the use shall require approval from the Planning and Zoning Commission for a special exception modification. The zoning permit application for a home occupation shall be required. Prior to the issuance of a home occupation permit, any comments from the fire department shall be incorporated to the satisfaction of the fire marshal. And then the standard condition that no lighting will exceed the regulations. And that's pretty much it.
Great. Thank you, Caitlin. Any further comments from anyone? Then does someone want to make a motion to approve this application for a special exception for a major home occupation with the findings and the 4 conditions that are in Caitlin's staff report of November 5, 2020?
So moved. John Lust.
Motion made by John. Is there a second?
Second by Chadwick.
Second by Joe Chadwick. Any further discussion? All in favor? We'll go through it. John, how do you vote?
John Lust in favor.
Joe Chadwick.
Chadwick in the affirmative.
Joe Vayuzo.
Joe Vayuso agrees.
Marcy.
Marcy agrees.
And Chair also agrees. So that's approved. Congratulations if you're still around. So then let's go through our old business. Old business items 1 and 2 are tidal basin. This is a matter where we closed the hearing, I think, on October 1st, and we're running up against potential time extension or deadline to make a decision. We have authority under the executive order for COVID to grant ourselves a 90-day extension, and I don't think we've used any of it, but that order expires November 9th. Although I don't think we'll need it, I think we should grant ourselves our 90-day extension for this, so that we have enough time, because I anticipate it's going to be at least 2 meetings. We have to talk about this and the Mariners Landing at one meeting, and then there's going to direct staff to do resolutions. So it's going to be at least another month before we render a decision. So is that okay with everyone, that we grant ourselves the extension allowed under the executive order to render decisions for tidal basin up to 90 days? Again, I don't think we'll use it, but we may lose it, I think, if we don't. Harry, did I get that right?
A couple comments. One is that I believe we've already used 13 days of the 90. And I believe this question came up, and Attorney Anaskovich's opinion, I believe, was that the 90 days automatically kicks in. I know we had a couple of instances granted some of the 90 to ourselves. So I think it's belt and suspenders, so I don't think there's anything wrong with taking a motion. I'll certainly defer to you as, a land use attorney, but I just wanted to note that record.
Okay, yeah, I prefer
You have
this.
7 days left.
Okay, so we've used 13 days, or we used what?
13
okay,
days.
Yeah. Okay, so let's grant ourselves, what's 90 minus 13?
77.
Okay, let's grant ourselves the remaining 77 days extension to decide the applications. Not that we'll need them. Does someone want to make that motion?
So moved.
Moved by John. Is there a second?
Chadwick seconds.
Second by Joe. Further discussion, all in favor? John, you in favor?
John Lust in favor.
Joe Chadwick, you in favor?
Chadwick in the affirmative.
Joe Vayuso, you in favor?
Joe Vayuso in favor.
Marcy, you in favor?
I'm in favor, but I have a question.
Well, we'll do the vote, and I'm also in favor, so the motion passes. What's your question?
We heard tidal basin well ahead of Mariner's Landing. So really only extending tidal basin, and Mariner's Landing timeline is still the regular time frame?
Yeah, well, the Mariners Landing, the public hearing's still open. The applicant actually agreed to give us an extension because we were running out of time there too on the 17th. So I think she's going to grant an extension in writing tomorrow to take us through the 19th, at least for the public hearing. And then we get the normal 65. The problem with on tidal basin is that we've used the 65 plus the 90 up because the hearing was closed so long ago.
Right, and they're all okay with these extensions? Has anybody checked with them?
The 90 days is up to the commission. It's totally, rather than the usual way where the applicant has to offer it, for the 90 days, the commission just grants it to itself.
Okay.
We don't need their permission.
Yeah, it's a different animal.
Certainly is. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a COVID thing. The governor's emergency order. So anyway, I mean, they may give us permission. Okay, so what the thought was on these things, I'm hopeful that we close Mariner's Landing next week and that it won't be a long meeting because it's 11:05 now. We're on our another 4-hour meeting. Congratulations, guys. Everyone's doing great. But I'm hoping. I don't think we have major public hearings next time, so I'm hopeful that we could actually discuss both tidal basin and Mariner's Landing. In other words, we're going to finish Mariner's Landing. And anytime you continue a public hearing, it may last. It's going to be a half hour because it just will. But we may have an hour and still close the meeting at 10:30 to discuss tidal basin and Mariner's Landing. So that's what I would suggest. Get ready for at our next meeting on the 19th. Dig up your tidal basin stuff. Dig up the Mariner's Landing stuff so we can start talking about that. The idea would be we talk about them at our next meeting and then we give direction to Harry if we're ready. If we're not, we just keep going. But the idea is we only have, it'd be nice to get a decision this year. We have one regular meeting on November 19th and just one meeting in December. So that would be the goal so that we could get some idea of where those both are going have a full discussion at our next meeting, direct to staff to make a resolution, then we vote at our December meeting on those resolutions. And for those, I think, again, John has recused himself. So I think it's probably going to be Fred, because I think Fred's attended the meetings and of the alternates. I don't know if anyone else, but we'll have to, I mean, that's, we should confirm that because Fred's got to do some homework, just to be ready. So anyway, that's it. So that's items 1 and 2. Item 3 is Mariners, which we just covered. Item number 4 was the special exception. We have a public hearing on the 19th, so there's something else going on the 19th. But that shouldn't be, that's Branford Road. That's items 5 and 6 are public hearings. And then we come to item number 7, which is an actual question here. Subdivision modification, 8791 Stony Creek Road. Dennis and Lisa Bozola, applicants and owner. This is a subdivision modification question. And Caitlin, I think, is the applicant here on that?
Yes.
Yes, Jim. Okay. So Jim, you want to just go over this?
Sure. Jim Preddy, Priscolo Engineering, representing Dennis and Lisa Bizzuto. They have purchased both lots 3 and 4 of what was known as Tinker Woods. Sometime in the recent past, a couple of years ago, Waldo and Associates, who had done the original subdivision, had come in to the health department and wetlands for the same lot revision. it had actually gone to Assistant Planner Rich Stecker for some comments, and then it got dropped, and I don't know why. Maybe they lost the buyer. I don't really know why it got dropped. So now the Bizzutos would like me to basically get the ball over the goal line, get this approved by you folks so we can file a Mylar, and they can go ahead and start building a house. The Bizzutos are building their own house on lot 3, which is becoming the bigger, or is gaining the property, and they have someone that's interested in lot 4 who's the lot's getting slightly smaller. I can show the plan on the screen quickly if you'd like. These are the two lots, lot 3, and they're kind of odd shaped because there's some ledge outcroppings and some conservation easements. But lot 3 goes like this. Currently the lot line goes out to the back here. And this is lot 4 on this side. The proposed lot line is here. And this line would go away. So lot 3 would kind of wrap around. There's a big Tilcon property in the back, and there's Tilcon Railroad on this side. The house on this side is way out by the road. This change doesn't really affect where the house was going on lot 4 anyway, for the subdivision. Doesn't affect the conservation easements at all. The house that is going on lot 3 would actually move over a little bit away from lot 2. You can't even see this from the road. We're not creating a new lot, so I don't think this creates any issues for anyone. It's just a matter of we need to file a new Mylar to change the lot line.
Thank you, Mr. Preddy. Caitlin, you did the staff report on this thing?
I did, yeah. And again, Jim explains the bulk of it. So a lot line revision falls under our subdivision regulations, and the procedure is you file a re-subdivision application with the plan, and the commission needs to make a finding based on the regulations that there is no re-subdivision and it is in fact a lot line revision. So they don't need to proceed any further down the path of a re-subdivision. And in your memo, there's the guidelines for what constitutes a re-subdivision, and that includes a change to a map that affects a street layout, any change to land reserved for public use, and anything that diminishes the size of a lot and creates an additional building lot. It doesn't meet any of those criteria, so it's staff's opinion that it is a lot line revision, and the commission would just need to make such a finding.
Any questions from commission members?
No.
Okay. Someone want to make a motion that the proposed lot line revision for 87 and 91 Stony Creek Road does not constitute a subdivision or re-subdivision, and is therefore
by Chadwick.
Okay, motion made by Joe Chadwick. Is there a second?
Second by John.
Second by John. Any further discussion? All in favor? John, are you in favor?
John Lust in favor.
Joe Chadwick?
Chadwick in favor.
Joe Vayuzo?
Joe Vayuso in favor.
Marcy?
Marcy in favor.
Chuck Andrews, chair, also in favor. Okay, so you're clear on that one, Jim.
Thank you.
Okay, so that brings us then to new business. Goodsell Point Road, another PED mixed use for marina and residential. We need to schedule a public hearing for that. You have a suggested date, Harry?
Harry Smith, Town Planner. I have talked to Attorney Shansky, who's representing the applicant, and I'd like to suggest that the commission delegate setting a public hearing date to myself and the chair, likely to be the 10th of December, but that would give us flexibility with respect to some of the, workload coming up to decide the big applications and so forth, and more time to discuss the matter with Attorney Shansky and the applicant.
Okay, is that okay with everyone?
Yes.
Okay. Okey doke. So, item number 2 is a coastal site plan, 1 Halsted Lane, for a FEMA compliant house in Pine Orchard. Is the applicant here on that?
That's me again.
Okay.
I was running the marathon with us.
Okay, Mr. Preddy, you want to go forward with this?
Sure, very quickly. 1 Halsted Lane, the house was, well, the plan was reviewed already by the Pine Orchard CEO, and there was no issues there, that she's approved it. Let's see.
Jim, down in Pine
Here's the
Orchard,
plan.
right? Down in Pine Orchard,
Orchard.
to be clear. Yeah.
What did I say?
I don't believe you said that, but maybe you did.
Sorry. I could have said East Haven, I don't know. So anyway, some number of years ago, I think right after one of the storms, this whole riprap revetment was rebuilt with the patio area, dock, in preparation for a new house. It's taken them this long to decide on the house. So here's the new house with the patio and a pool. There is a couple of existing trees out by the driveway here that are to remain. This right now currently is all lawn. It's just been maintained as a lawn this whole time. There is right here this copper beech tree that he's actually installed temporarily chain link fencing that's outside the drip line, because very, very concerned about any roots or anything getting damaged. This site was kind of laid out basically to work around that copper beech. But in any event, typical soil erosion controls, construction entrance over here. The material storage would be up in this area here. This is very flat site. There's almost no pitch at all. The erosion potential is very limited. Again, this is all riprap revetment at this end, and we'd have silt fence uphill of that all the way around. I think the staff report, the findings were that we were consistent, and a few comments were about installing erosion controls before construction started, which they've actually already put in preparation of this.
How big is that copper beech?
How big is it?
Yeah, do you know the caliper?
I don't remember. I want to say it's almost 4 feet.
So it's like 48 inches?
Big. Yeah, it's pretty big.
Wow. Okay. Are you doing any kind of, horticultural assessment before you get into construction or anything like that?
He did have someone out there. They, which is why the fence is outside the drip line, because someone told them that even driving, not digging, but just driving a regular vehicle, a passenger vehicle over the area where the roots are could harm the tree. So they were, before anything got started there, they went out and put the fence up.
I don't blame them.
Thanks, Chuck Anderson here. Thanks, Jim. Caitlin, you did the staff report.
Yes. Application is Pine Orchard zoning. It was already approved by their zoning enforcement officer. So we're just reviewing the CAM. I would say the bulk of the possible impact to any coastal resources was probably done when that riprap wall was replaced a few years ago, and the landing and the retaining walls and all that were installed. So I haven't really identified any potential new impact or issue that the house creates that the wall wasn't already mitigated for. So I think I included a general comment that, of course, erosion control measures should be installed prior. Any comments from DEEP, which I don't think have been received, should be incorporated into the plans, and that we're going to want a final plan set. But I don't really have any concerns. Like I said, I think the wall probably created any issue that was going to be created, and that was properly mitigated already. So that's where I stand on that.
Thanks, Caitlin. Any comments from her? Gary? Huh?
Harry Smith, Town Planner. I think we did get something from DEP, and I've got an email here. And the bottom line is provided adequate soil and erosion control measures implemented, regularly monitored, maintained for the duration of the construction activity so that no sediment, concrete, or debris are allowed to enter the adjacent coastal waters. No further comments about it.
That's kind of covered in our normal.
Can't hear.
Normal
Right.
conditions. Did you not hear me? I'm sorry.
You're going in and out.
Oh,
Both
sorry.
of you
I'm
are.
turning my head. Essentially, the bottom line is she has no comments as long as soil and erosion controls are implemented and nothing's going into the water.
Great. Okay, then. So Caitlin, I have your memo, which is your staff report, and your findings and conditions there, and pull it up there. So it says, Caitlin mentioned the one finding and the three normal conditions that Caitlin reviewed. So does any further questions? If not, does someone want to make a motion to approve the application with the finding? It's in general consistency with CAM policies and procedures and the three conditions: soil and erosion, final plans, and that's. We don't even need three, right?
I don't think so.
Yeah, delete three, so we can 1 and 2. So someone want to make that motion? Approval
So
with
moved, John Lust.
Yeah, okay. John makes a motion to approval with the finding and the 2 conditions. Is there a second?
Joe Vayuso seconds.
Second by Joe. Further discussion, all in favor? John, you in favor?
John in favor, yes.
Joe Chadwick?
Chadwick in favor.
Joe Vayuso?
Joe Vayuso in favor.
Marcy?
Marcy's in favor.
And I'm also in favor, so congratulations.
Thank you, and thank you folks for staying open for me.
Absolutely. Okay then, so running through the rest of the agenda. Item number 4 is a 65 Applewood special exception for an accessory apartment. We have that down for when? What do you recommend on that, Harry?
I think we were talking about the 19th. Caitlin, that
My recollection as well.
Okay. Number 4 on for the 19th. Number 5, which is subdivision modification. Just table item.
we don't need to set a public hearing date because I don't believe it's a resub, but we'll take a look at that. We just got it in a couple of days ago, and we just let it hang for now, I think.
Okay, so we'll just table that one. Okay, other business.
We have 2 more new applications. One is a modification to an open space subdivision at Gould Lane that just came in yesterday. And I'm not sure they made all the applications they need to make, so we're still looking at that. So I think we just let that also, let the clock start on that, and we'll come with a recommendation the next meeting about setting a date for a hearing. And then we have an application 9 Elm Street. There's an auto body shop down there, proposing a parking addition. I think that's just a site plan, or is that a special exception, Kate, do you recall?
It's a special exception.
Okay. Perhaps that can be delegated to staff and the chair to set a date once we've looked at it more closely.
Is that okay with everyone? For the new one coming in, we'll just set the date. Harry will talk to me. I see no objection.
Yes, it's okay.
Okay, great. Anything else, Harry?
No, and I have no further report at this late hour.
Great. Okay, 11:23. We're stretching it. Okay, then. Someone want to make a motion to adjourn?
Joe Vayuso makes.
Sorry, Joe.
We'll give it to Joe Vayuso. Is there a
Joe
second?
Vayuso.
I'm not in too much of a hurry, am I?
No. Joe V makes a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Joe C seconds.
Oh, we'll give that to Joe C. Joe C second. Any further discussion? All in favor? John, you in favor of adjourning?
In favor.
Joe Chadwick.
Bombs away, Joe Chadwick.
Yes. Joe Vayuzo.
In favor.
Marcy.
Of course.
And me too. Good night, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Good night.
Buona notte.
Kate, drive safe, Kate.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Branford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BranfordTV.org.